Okay, that's probably enough time. All the commissioners who I anticipated coming tonight are here. Melissa Cody and Julie Busa gave advance notice that they weren't going to be able to attend. We should still have quorum. And I just had a couple housekeeping things that if I could say in the beginning before we get started, just because we have so many people here today. I just wanted to say, if you're on the computer joining us, please ensure that you're muted until the item that you're here for is up. And if you're a member of the public, you'll please wait until the chair opens the discussion for public comment. Also too, let's see, if you're using the computer, if you have the understanding of how to do it, if you could change your name to be your name, just for the sake of attendance, that's really helpful. If you don't know how to do that, it's okay. And then people on the phone will be sure to reach out to you and give you an opportunity to make comment as well, if you'd like, when the public comment time comes about. That's all I had for now. I don't know, Jay, if you're going to be the chair this evening.
I guess I voted myself in.
Very cool. Well, you can take it away whenever you like.
All right, let's go. All right, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found below. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can equally access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the City of Easthampton website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the proceeding as soon as possible after the meeting. Should an interruption occur in which the meeting ends abruptly, the meeting will not be restarted. All agenda items will be automatically continued to the next scheduled meeting. All right, so let's call to order the April 26th meeting for the Easthampton Conservation Commission. Are there any public concerns or non-agenda items?
I haven't received any.
Okay.
Oh, Deb, did you have something? Oh, okay. Yeah, if people have any comments that are related to items that are on the agenda, I'd ask that they hold. This is for non-agenda items, and I haven't received any.
Okay. All right, so the first public hearing is the public meeting for request for termination of applicability for the Pan Am Railroads. Is there someone here to talk to that?
Yes, my name is Keith Morris, consultant for Pan Am Railways. If you'd like, I can give a brief overview.
That would be great.
Sure. Every 5 years, as part of the renewal for their vegetation management plan, we're required under the Department of Agricultural Resource regulations to update the no spray zones through each community which they run through. And that's just basically areas, regulated wetland areas that are within 10 feet of the spray pattern. Easthampton is kind of about as simple as you can get. There's only maybe a couple 100 feet of track, and the only no spray is the obvious one as it crosses over the Oxbow area. And the marking system approved by the state, we actually paint the ties. So coming towards the Oxbow, you would have a blue tie followed immediately by a yellow tie. As you go through the other side and cross the Oxbow, you would have a yellow tie, then a blue tie, and between the yellow ties would be a no spray zone. And if any of you ever go by there, you can see all the weeds on the tracks in the summertime, much to the chagrin of the railroad, but that's the regulations. I did remark those, and I met Cassie out there a couple weeks ago, and I believe she took a couple pictures, but pretty straightforward. I've been doing it for I think this is the 4th or 5th time, so about 20, 25 years. And not that it's part of this application, but when they do the application, I actually ride in the truck with the applicator with these maps to make sure the no spray zones are located and obviously not sprayed. But Easthampton, it's just the 2 markings there.
Yeah, like Keith mentioned, I did do a site visit on April 7th. I can share those pictures if you guys want to see. It is a really small area. And I just want to note that the work itself of the herbicide application is exempt under the Wetlands Protection Act. So this is similar to what we did recently with Mass DOT. They're looking for a positive determination for the wetland boundary as they're depicted in their plan. Do you guys want me to share those pictures now?
Sure.
All right, hold on a second. Okay. Okay, so this is a good overview picture of the area. Let me scroll side to side. Okay, so yeah, this is kind of the oxbow area. This is the wetland down there. And then you can see the spraying that they're using, which indicates when to start and stop the application. And it's literally from here to down there. Then you're outside of Easthampton. So closer look, it's down that area is where it ends. Just look at the spraying. A more centered look at the spraying. Detail of the water below. And that's all the images I got. So yeah, it's pretty clear where the wetland resource area is, in my opinion.
Do the commissioners have any questions? Does anyone from the public have any questions?
Yeah, and I realize I should make a note. If people do want to, indicate that they have a comment, they can either unmute themselves and say it. You can send a message in the chat just saying that you have a comment. Put the comment in the chat if you like. Or down at the bottom, there's a reactions option. You can raise your hand. So you can do it that way. But yeah, doesn't look like anyone has comments. So.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So I'm looking at the different options for negative determinations of applicability here. Cassie, do you think, or Keith, I guess, would we be looking at a negative determination number 3 that there may be work within the buffer zone, but it would not alter an area subject to protection, or are we looking at a 6?
You would actually be looking at, Mark Stinson, I think, sent out a bulletin a while back. You'd actually be looking at a positive 2A because there's no work proposed under this. It's just for approval of the wetland boundary. And I always recommend to the commissioners, they put in the comment section that the approval is only for the purpose of vegetation control, because it's not your typical blue flagging, numbered flagging on a plan. It's just for the actual herbicide application. So yeah, it would be a positive 2A. And he has, last time around, he has sent some back that were, the commission's put down negative. So
okay,
you probably want to do that one.
All right, I'm now seeing a draft that we have that which would be a positive 2A, but also a positive 2B, which would just indicate that there are some resource areas that are not demarcated. Yeah,
I put that in there because just based off of our previous similar discussion for another project or another RDA, but it was similar. They were looking for a positive determination of resource boundaries. I don't know how applicable the 2B is this time, just because I think it's just the one resource area that they're looking for. And now, as Keith is describing it, if we just said, only for the process of herbicide treatment, maybe that would make sense more as a comment in under 2A. I don't know. It's up to you guys how you want to do it. But I think because last time there was multiple types of resource areas.
Okay. And actually, is it bank we are confirming, or is it BVW we are confirming here?
It's just basically a resource area. It'd be the actual river itself.
Okay.
And riverfront area is exempt also. But 2B says you don't approve of the wetland boundary, so I think you'd want 2A unless there's any other concerns.
Okay. So I will move to issue a positive determination of applicability number 2A that the boundary delineations for the following resource areas are confirmed as accurate. And those resource areas would be, I believe, bank associated with the Connecticut River and Oxbow, I believe.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, do a roll call vote. Commissioner Cody absent with notice. Commissioner Busa absent with notice. Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Whitmore.
Aye.
Ryan, aye. August.
Aye.
And Tupper.
Aye.
So the motion passes. Any other discussion?
Keith, I'll be in touch. I can send you that completed determination, hopefully by the end of the week.
Yeah, you could send the original to Bill Wallace, who's on the application, and just email me a copy if you would.
Sounds good. I can do that.
And I appreciate your help, Cassie. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right, the next public hearing is a notice of intent filed by Heritage Land Survey for a property on Ferry Street and Duda Drive. So I see you there, Mark, if you want to speak to that.
Yes, my name is Mark Reed from Heritage Land Surveying and Engineering. We have filed a notice of intent on behalf of Dave Lapine for a piece of property located on Ferry Street with frontage both on Ferry Street of about 222 feet, as well as about 20 feet, just shy of 20 feet of frontage on Duda Drive. The parcel itself is a 7.4 acre parcel of land, most recently used as agricultural use for growing hops. We had a site visit, Cassie and Jay, last Wednesday to look at the property in itself. The applicant is proposing to construct a driveway off of Duda Drive to a proposed house. And I can share the plans, Cassie, or you can.
I set you up as a co-host, Mark, it should do,
Okay.
so give it a try.
All right, I will share the plans. Come in. So can everyone see this?
No, I can't see it.
Okay,
not
one
yet.
second, bear with me. Why is it not coming up?
Let me make sure.
There
Oh,
it
there we
is.
go.
There it is. So this is, and I can zoom in on the property in itself. Because it is quite large, 7 acre piece of property. So this is Ferry Street that runs on the northerly end of the property. There is a perennial stream that runs along the property. It's the boundary line between Harvest Valley Condominiums and the parcel that's owned by Mr. Lapine. There's associated bordering vegetated wetlands, as you can see. There is not the ability, because of between the resource areas and riverfront area, to access the property from Ferry Street. So the property then, and I have a second sheet to do a blow up of this, but kind of wraps around these two pieces of property and extends in this area. So it's kind of like a horseshoe almost. So I'm going to switch to a larger scale plan because it's a little bit easier to see. If I can pick the right one. This is sheet 2 of the proposal, which it kind of looks a larger view of the actual work area being proposed. With Duda Drive, and I'll zoom in on it so people can see it. Duda Drive located in this area. The property has, like I said, 19.63 feet of frontage along Duda Drive. It comes down and wraps around to a large area where the hops were being grown on the property. There's an old farm pond and an intermittent stream that runs through the property. The flow of the water from the intermittent stream runs into an existing culvert, and then connects up to the perennial stream and flows towards Ferry Street in itself. So what is being proposed is actually two things. One is this piece of property is currently under agreement to purchase, and part of the agreement is that the applicant shall demonstrate that a house could be built on this piece of property. I believe the people that are going to purchase it don't want to build anything at this point in time, but want to make sure that they have the ability to protect the interest of the property. So that's why we filed the notice of intent. So we are proposing a 12-foot wide driveway, which would be located within the buffer zone. Here's the 100-foot buffer zone shown on the plan. The house itself would be outside the 100-foot buffer zone, as well as the 200-foot riverfront area. And these are the revised plans based on comments from Mark Stenson from DEP, so that all work for the proposed house and driveway would be outside the riverfront area. The closest point to the bordering vegetated wetlands associated with the old farm pond would be 15 feet to the erosion control barriers, silt fence that would be installed. There is no need for grading. The driveway can follow the existing topography of the property. And Cassie has some pictures that I'm sure she can share that demonstrates it. This area is currently lawn all through this area, starting up at Duda Drive and running around this entire section, so that the 12-foot wide driveway would come around and loop to the proposed house. There would be underground utilities being served by town water and sewer, as well as electric and cable and telephone to service the property. So the plans have been prepared in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act. We have details and for construction related details for silt fence, stone tracking pad being installed here to make sure that during construction of the house, any soils or dirt on the tires of the vehicles exiting the property would be caught up in the stone tracking pad to keep Duda Drive clean. And the proposed house does meet the zoning requirements for this district for setback requirements. The front yard and rear yard is 30 feet for zoning, so that we have 32 feet. So we're over the minimum requirements for the zoning setbacks for it. I did a response letter that I submitted to the commission relative to comments that Mark Stenson had made. One being showing the 200-foot arc being around the end of the perennial stream, because we're at the beginning of this perennial stream. So that's been done for the plan itself. He made a comment relative to the current drought that the state is in. We're not disagreeing that there is a perennial stream located on the property as shown on the plans. So we're not trying to say that there's not a perennial stream located from the beginning or the end of the culvert all the way out to Ferry Street. So with that, I can try to answer any questions that the commissioner would have, or change to a different plan if people want to see a different view.
Cass, you want to show the photos that you took?
Yeah, hold on just 1 second.
Yeah, let me stop sharing, Cassie.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, we did the site visit on April 21st. And Commissioner Ryan was there as well as Mark Reed and Mr. Lepine. So this is kind of looking from the property out to Duda Drive. This is the fire hydrant, is kind of in the center line of the access driveway, and it's going to be shifted to the left. And Mark, feel free to jump in here if
Sure.
I
No,
say anything incorrectly.
That's true, right. Right, I
But yeah.
forgot to mention about the fire hydrant. Yes, it would be relocated to the opposite side of the tree that you see in the photo here.
Right, so it's good reference point to just see, like, kind of visualize where that drive would go, and then extending towards where I took this picture from. And then it would come around this area right here is generally where the corner of the property line is, correct?
Correct.
And the drive would come along towards me again. This is the outlet of that culvert where it's depicted that the perennial stream begins. So straight ahead or generally ahead would be Ferry Street from this perspective. Kind of just another look. Again, there's the hydrant area over here. So coming down around this way is where the access drive would go. Let's see, this is looking at the farm pond area. And there's a lot of vegetation around the pond, so it's hard to see, but this kind of lower area is the farm pond. Let's see, this is the former part of the former hop growing operation. Over here is kind of where the perennial stream is, where this larger vegetation and this whole kind of vegetated area is the part that kind of goes up to Ferry Street, which would be, through the woods here. This is looking at the inlet where the intermittent stream ends and then becomes the perennial stream where the culvert begins. Kind of right here, you can see this kind of stone structure, and it just kind of snakes its way through here. This is the general farm pond area. The road proposed access way would be up here. Okay, let's see. This area, let's see, I believe just kind of looking back, the culvert, I think the culvert is directly behind me here, the outlet.
Right, yeah, I believe
Underneath.
you're standing with your back towards the beginning of the perennial street, looking at the pond, the old pond in the forefront.
Gotcha. Again, kind of just general area. Again, that's where the drive starts, comes down around. This is the opposite perspective. So behind me is where the kind of hydrant area previously shown was, and the drive would go straight ahead.
So Cassie, not to interrupt you, but you can see there's a tree in the foreground, and that roughly is the boundary line. So that from that point to maybe where Jay is standing is roughly the boundary line. So the driveway would be in that lawn area. As you can see, there's really no grade change needed to facilitate the driveway in itself.
Thank you for noting that.
Yep.
This is just some general vegetation. This is in the area that is kind of near the The farm pond, I believe, is like over here and the grass is behind me. More images of the farm pond. This is the area looking towards where a Ferry Street is up ahead, the vegetated riverfront area.
Right.
This is zoomed in. This is the culvert. You can kind of see the concrete structure here. Just tried to zoom in to get a look at that. Again, the old hop growing operation. This is looking towards kind of where the house would be, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, right here. This is
Yep.
where the house would be. This in this
Correct.
growing operation.
Correct.
And then looking back at that pond area. Another look, there's the culvert. The depicted intermittent stream. Does anyone want me to go back to anything or?
Do we know what the internal structural capacity of that culvert is? Is it able to handle flashy streams and runoff?
Yes, it actually, that culvert has been in place. It's a 30-inch corrugated metal pipe. It's been in place for over 65 years. And it was put in about 65 years ago by Mr. Lapine's wife's grandfather as part of the farming of the property. And it does have the capacity.
Okay, so it doesn't need updating, because generally when they're over 50 years old, we want to check that out, but I'm sure the DEP maybe took a look into that.
Correct. No, it does have the capacity. It's a 30-inch pipe and it is functioning.
Any other questions by commissioners?
Yeah. So I guess, so a similar application came before us in 2007. It was about a month before I got on the committee. And just to like summarize my understanding of the history is that where the stream comes towards this area, it's intermittent, as you've talked about, Mark, and then it entered where the pond was, and then as it leaves the pond, it becomes perennial. So like somewhere in there, it changes over from intermittent to perennial, essentially. And just like looking back through the information, it looks like during the last round of hearings, the decision was that the riverfront area was a 200-foot buffer off the inlet end of the pipe. And now what you're showing on the drawings is that riverfront area comes off of the outlet end of the pipe. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that's my question, is that like, that's the important thing to make sure that we understand correctly, is where the exact spot is that riverfront area begins. And I'm not saying I know the answer, but I'm saying that seems to be the question.
Right. So yes, there was a previous filing in 2007, which was withdrawn without prejudice by the applicant. I don't know, looking at it, I feel that the perennial stream starts at the outlet end of it. I guess that's a decision for the commission to make, whether they agree with our opinion on that end of it.
I guess did it seem like DEP intended one interpretation or the other in their comment letter?
Well, I guess we can put their comment letter up so you can see it. So that maybe that will make a clarification on what Mark Stenson's thinking of it is.
Yep.
So I don't know, Cassie, you want me to share that part of it?
I can do it if you prefer. It's up to you.
Okay, I can put our letter up and then, right.
Thank you.
And just while you're putting that up for the benefit of the other commissioners as well, there's a condominium, a condo development, like I think it's called Mount Thomas Estates, just upstream from here along East Street, along the same like water course. And that stream, I think it comes out of a culvert underneath like the remnants of an old barn. And I haven't gone back and looked at the drawings associated with that, but Melissa, Cody, and I did talk, and we both recall that we did not call it riverfront area up that far. We were just calling it an intermittent stream with bank and no riverfront area. So that's consistent with what we're talking about here, at least going up that far.
Right.
Yep.
I believe so, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, because I guess looking at the plan, the condominium project is right across, well, the boundary line is along the center line of the brook. And that condominium project is to the, what direction are we at here? Let me go to this one. So that Harvest Valley condominiums are located over in this, this area here.
Oh, actually, that was I was talking about like to the south.
Okay.
That way. Yeah, actually, I noticed that Harvest Valley condominiums had been constructed at some point, but I've never seen, I don't know the history of that. I've never seen any of the documentation for that.
Okay.
So I don't know how we ruled on that. But I'm talking about like, I don't know what the name of the street
on
is.
On East Street, you mean, Dan?
Yeah. Right where the stream comes out of the culvert. I think it used to be called Mount Thomas Estates. I don't know if that's still the name. Oh yeah, it is still Mount Thomas Estates, it looks like.
Let me switch back to this. So this is our response letter that to Mark Stenson's comments. So that the notice of intent narrative states that the delineation was done in 2007. It is unclear if anyone has checked to see if the wetland boundaries are still accurate. And we had the site visit with Jay and Cassie that we were just talking about earlier. And that our response is the applicant is only requesting confirmation of the wetland boundaries on the west side of the old pond and at the beginning of the perennial stream. Both areas were reviewed at the site visit on April 21st, and that there's no other work being proposed except for the driveway and proposed house on the plans, and that both the old farm pond and the 30-inch culvert have been in existence for more than 65 years. So that's why we felt that the riverfront starts at the outlet end and not the inlet end. Item 2 talks about in Mark's comments, and you can see his comments in response to the regulations talking about the 200-foot riverfront goes in an arc at the point where the stream becomes perennial. And it's drawn as a semicircle in a 200-foot radius around the point and connects in a parallel line to the mean annual high water. So that's the revised plans do show what we feel is the beginning of the stream, because it's been in existence for over 65 years in that fashion. For that. And then the third item was relative to the drought condition. So I guess it would be, if the commission felt that the 200-foot riverfront area starts at the inlet end of the pipe and not the outlet end of the pipe as the plans show, then we would modify the application to show that, and to basically it's a limited project because it's a project to be able to access your upland area.
Mhm. I mean, I guess that's my feeling is that I would be most, and unless something has changed significantly, which it doesn't seem like it has. My inclination is to go with what we decided before, just for consistency's sake. Unless, like, if DEP had more, like if they've seen similar situations interpreted one way or the other, that would be a useful data point.
Right.
And just for my own clarification, what was decided before, if you can say that again, and then also, when did you make that decision? If you can remember.
So I just happen to notice that in the folder on the Google Drive was the minutes of that meeting. So it was October 22nd, 2007. And I guess I'm not sure that there was a.
Oh, I thought you were talking about whatever you decided for that other condominium project that was
Oh.
upstream.
Yeah.
Yeah, no decision was made for the previous 2007 application for this project, or
Right.
a similar project.
Right. Yeah. So upstream, for the upstream condo, it was intermittent, but I don't think that's in dispute. Yeah, and you're right. There was no decision in 2007, but I think that it looks like the discussion at that meeting was that riverfront area started at the inlet end of the culvert. In this case. And Mark Stinson, it looks like, was present at that meeting.
I was trying to think what other tools could be used to determine. I know it says in the regulations pretty clearly like what constitutes a perennial stream versus intermittent, but is there like potentially more analysis that could be done to determine if the inlet meets that requirement, or?
I'm not sure what it would be. I don't think.
We did send the revised plans and our narrative letter to Mark Stinson along with you. So I don't know. I haven't spoken to him since we sent it last week. So.
Yeah, I didn't get any response from him, but I can ask more directly to get a response if we want to do it that way. And I'm curious, Mark, if you're able to like find any information based off of like USGS. I know the USGS mapping is considered significant in this determination sometimes, but sometimes if it doesn't say, then it doesn't say.
Right. Well, the USGS map shows the old pond area, and of course it's a very small scale, so it doesn't have the definition as you see on the larger scale plans, but it does show that it is intermittent up gradient or to the south, like Dan's saying, of the farm pond. It doesn't show the intermittent stream going through the pond because the pond must have been full at that time when they prepared the maps. But then changing into a perennial stream heading towards Ferry Street. So the question is whether the culvert was there when that the USGS map was prepared or not, I don't know. Looking at it, I can't tell. It's just not enough definition to it, so.
Probably the thickness of the blue line around the pond in the map is about like the difference we're talking about.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the culvert.
Don't trust those thicknesses. They're not reliable.
Yeah, right. You know, in the culvert is roughly 100 feet in length, thereabouts. So, like you say, the thickness of the line is right on the USGS maps are that way. So,
Hey Kathy, it's Mike. Has a recent delineation been done on the property?
no, it has not. We're relying on the 2007 delineation because it's obvious that based on the site visit when we're out there, nothing has really changed. It looks the same today as it did then. For it, Mike.
Well,
Yes, can I comment off of Mike's comment, please? So it's been 14 years that you're saying the old pond is no longer there. So shouldn't there be another area delineation? If that has changed, there must be other changes throughout.
Okay, the pond doesn't hold water anymore, Deborah. The vegetation, the wetland vegetation is still all there, as kind of shown by the pictures that Cassie was showing. So the wetland boundary to the pond is still the same today as it was back then.
Well, I'm just saying overall in 14 years,
Sure.
they've lost the pond, but is it more encroaching? Is there other differences within the stream that we need to be aware of?
Mhm. Looking at it, I don't believe there's any change at all over the years here.
Was there water in the pond in
No,
2007, or was it still?
no. In 2007, there was no pond in the water then either. It was all
But it is it's a
vegetated.
wetland though, is that correct? It's
Yeah, it
a
was all
seasonal
just
wetland.
Yes, it was all wetlands, bordered with vegetated wetlands to the intermittent stream. Correct. And that's what the flags, the A series flags indicate is the edge of the BVW, which roughly was the old pond edge.
it's Mike, but wouldn't the commission want to do a little due diligence and have it delineated? I mean, we're basing it based on 2007.
We're also amidst a potential drought right now, so mapping it is going to be a little bit tricky. So it might be worth kind of thinking about, and a DEP probably has some historic information of what the flows might be in this area.
So what do we want to do then?
So I guess there's a question on Riverfront still, and then it sounds like some members have questions about whether the delineation has changed at all. And I guess I don't think I would be qualified to like take a look at it and see if I thought it was changed or not. Jay or Cassie, do you feel like you're in a position to understand whether it may have changed based on mapping changes or not mapping changes based on like the site visit or anything like that?
Well, having never seen the site before, it's hard to say whether it's different, but
Yeah.
Nothing's been done to the site, though there was water moving through it pretty good in that stream that day because we had rain prior, but it's hard to say what it was 14 years ago.
I agree with Jay. And all I can note is that, administratively, typically we want the delineation to have been completed within the last 3 years. And then also, what was I gonna say? Yeah, mainly just that that's what we typically do. So it's up to the discretion of the commission if they want an updated one. I think, you know, to Mark's point, there's no work proposed towards Ferry Street. So I think potentially a compromise could be to only have a new delineation completed within that kind of zoomed in area, as opposed to the entirety of the property, which, you know, is not really consequential for this project. I don't know if that's something that the commission would want to consider.
Right, okay.
And then I'll add too that maybe something, like I said before, just in terms of what Dan had said about the riverfront area, you know, the perennial stream starting at the inlet or the outlet. I could reach out to Mark Stinson for a more formal comments on the revised plan. If we wanted to take that and have that, hopefully we could probably get that in time for the next meeting.
It's Mike. Can we get a response from Mark and discuss it next meeting?
Sure, we'd be glad to, if that's the request of the commission to get an updated delineation, we could do that. I'm not positive we could have it done for your next meeting. We probably would have to continue it into your second meeting in May. But
May 24th, just so you know.
Okay, May 24th. That's more realistic, probably. But yes, if it's the wish of the commission, we can get an updated delineation. I agree with Cassie. There is no work being proposed up near Ferry Street. So if we were to focus in on this area of the old pond and the intermittent stream and determination with discussions with Mark Stenson, whether he feels that it's the inlet end or the outlet end. And then if need be, we modify the notice of intent to reflect whether it's the inlet or the outlet.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from commissioners? Are there any questions from the public?
Oh, I think Deb August has a comment,
Okay.
just quick before we move on to that.
Sure.
So could you tell us about that stone tracking pad in the driveway itself? Is it going to be paved? Is the stone being removed? Is this something that's staying permanently?
Sure. So I would envision that, maybe if there was a house there, they would want to pave the driveway. The stone tracking pad is only there during construction. So that doesn't stay there forever. So that after the house is built and the driveway is constructed, that stone tracking pad would be removed and that would be paved out to Duda Drive.
And did you mention how much disturbance there would be in doing this, and the driveway and the area that we're talking about?
Within the buffer zone, you mean?
Yes.
So good question. I think within the notice of intent, we might have said the area of disturbance within the buffer zone. I don't have that figure with me, Deborah, right now. But I can get that for our next meeting to answer your question. What the area of work in the buffer zone is.
Okay, thank you.
And it's Mike. It looks like the driveway, it goes down slope from the driveway. Is there anything else besides the silt fence during construction being put downstream from the driveway for runoff or anything?
No, we felt that the silt fence would be adequate. It's a 12-foot wide driveway to handle that.
Mark,
Yes.
this is Dave Lapine. I don't know if it's proper for me to talk now or not, but
No, go for it.
Okay, I just would like the commission to understand that this is not a proposal to do construction in there at this point. This is to satisfy a condition for the sale of this property to one of the abutters on Pepin Avenue, who I've entered into an agreement. I think when we did our site visit out there, I made that very clear. I, at this point, have no intentions of building a house there, and I don't believe even the future owners do. I've heard mixed things about them growing apple and doing an apple orchard. I don't know. I've never even met them personally. But I just want you to be aware as we talk about what this driveway may be done, the amount of impact as far as 12-foot wide, gravel base and everything is going to be in there. Is something that I don't have any control over at this point as being the applicant. I'm just trying to move this thing forward so that there can even be some kind of conditions based and recorded in the deed so that these people will feel at least comfortable with the fact that they have the ability not only to build a house there, but to get into their upland area where the house is going to be. Just in past things, because I have been involved in development for the better part of my life, it's always been my experience that the outflow of a culvert coming from a control structure like that pond had at one time is the end of the pond area, and that's just from experience that I've run into in different communities and doing work. I'm not trying to be an expert for DEP by any means, but I just wanted to throw that in there and let you know what was happening on my side of this.
Just as a note administratively, I appreciate you saying that, Mr. Lapine. I think that's good information. But just, if the commission does issue an order of conditions, they would, even if the intent is not to ultimately do the construction, they would be able to do the construction. And so we have to consider it as if it is going to happen. That's my understanding, at least. I don't know if the commission agrees.
No, I agree with you. Yeah.
So just because once it's issued, this is the plan that could be executed. Whether
correct.
it does get executed or not.
I completely understand that. I'm just pointing out the fact that whatever the decision is made, whether it's moves it forward, that I think the understanding on everybody here is not only myself but the future buyers would have to adhere to anything that the Conservation Commission puts into their findings.
Okay.
Any other questions from commissioners? Any questions from the public? All right, so what do we want to do? We want to continue this to May 24th and do a delineation of that localized area?
I think we might have one public comment, Jane,
Okay.
Ms. Bear-Lighton, if that's correct. And I just do want to note that we will be continuing. If you guys do decide to continue, there'll be an additional opportunity to have public comment, correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So, but Jane, if you'd like to go.
Oh, I would. I wanted to say a couple of things. One is that I was hoping that there would be a continuation, primarily because our wetlands delineator that I got in contact with was unavailable this evening, just because of the turnaround time from the information I got from you, Cassie, to ask him if he could be available to be here with us and talk a little bit about my situation. And I believe, the primary abutter for this driveway, and some of the concerns that I have about not only at this point the impact on drainage from my property, also the vegetation disruption, some questions about compensatory storage for what's going to be coming in, what might be removed from that driveway, its permeability, etc. And I also do have some other questions that I'd like to raise about how it will impact the small community, and if there is an alternative perhaps for getting into this site without going through the Duda Drive proposed access.
Well,
And I don't need to mention all of those things now, but I would love to in the future. I don't want to prolong this as long as there's going to be a second round.
But for this commission, the things that we want to talk about, what impacts the Wetland Protection Act, that's all. So you may have other concerns for your property, but for us, it's really the wetlands that we're trying to control here.
Right, and I understand that, of course, the wetlands are important in this area, but my property drains through the wetlands, and anything that might, of course, prohibit that drainage would have an impact on the wetlands as well.
Okay. So at this point, are we requesting a delineation of that localized area? Is that what we want to do before the next meeting, or the next 2 meetings out?
Hello.
Yes?
Yeah, that sounds like
Yes.
an item that would help satisfy commission members.
I believe we have
That's
someone on
true.
the phone trying to make a comment potentially. Phone number ending in 336.
Hi, I don't know, but can you hear me?
Mr. Layton?
Yes.
I'm Jane Bear Layton's husband. I just wanted to verify if it would be possible for us to actually motivate finding a delineation of the riverfront ourselves, and be able to investigate that and then submit to the commission those findings. At the next meeting when this subject would next come up.
Do you mean, I'm sorry, do you mean getting your own delineation performed on someone else on this property?
Yes, in terms of what the riverfront delineation might be. If we can submit our own information on that for the next meeting, or should we do that ahead of time? I feel that we need to be able to prepare some arguments on the other side. The driveway, we feel, is going to be a real burden, and to the wetlands as well. Those wetlands are very close. Putting a driveway there is going to, I think, seriously affect what the drainage is going to be. In order to put a driveway in there, there's going to be an enormous amount of work in what I would say is the 200-foot buffer zone. I agree that there's USGS and all the rest. However, I did walk the Mount Thomas State condos. I met the woman who owns the condo right at the edge, where the river comes under East Street, and it has never gone dry in the 5 years that she's been there. Since we purchased that property, or my wife's father did, that stream has never gone dry. Now, what the actual difference is between perennial and intermittent, just logically, and I agree there's probably all sorts of precedent and et cetera, but just looking at it logically, if you have a pipe and something goes in intermittent, what comes out is what goes in. I would suggest that when the pond was there, that the pond was certainly perennial, and that the intermittent pieces were what drained into the pond. So perhaps I would even argue, and I know I'm not a water engineer, that perhaps the original delineation of that pond, and therefore where it would cross the present stream bed, might be the point. I walked the area around the Mount Tom Estates, and the old, what I understand is the Burt Farm, is right there. That stream coming under East Street goes into an extensive wetlands. There really is no stream. The condos, when they were built, they built a whole drainage system that also drains into this wetlands. I would suggest that if we actually start looking at what the drainage is since that pond was empty, that we might actually find that with the wetlands that are upstream, what has now been diverted into that wetlands, that is now the headwaters above Duda Drive for the stream that, using the regular meaning, is a perennial stream. I cannot find anybody who has seen it gone dry. Thank you.
So this is Dave Lapine again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So it's my understanding that these people are asking to do a delineation on my project, on my property.
Are you asking me?
This is what I just understood you to say. We are going to apparently need to do another updated delineation by a certified wetlands expert. And I guess we're going to have to rely on his determinations as to what it is. But nobody else is going to be going in there and doing anything on my property.
Right. Put two and two together. I'm reacting to what's going on. Obviously, yes, the niceties of, you can't go on someone's property without permission. I agree. But I do feel that we would like to have input into this project, into the proposal to put a driveway right next to our property. And I contest the actual distances. If you include all of the brush and all that is grown up there, my understanding that's part of the riverfront area if it's 200 feet. And it would be very tough putting in the driveway there. I think we should also ask in terms of drainage. That is all clay. Our property, my wife's property, drains to that stream. Our neighbor's property drains through our property to that stream. Putting in a road, driveway, paved driveway, I don't see how that cannot change the drainage.
Well, we have to worry about the things that affect what the wetlands are, and whether it's a driveway or a building or whatever. It's really, we're here to be concerned about what wetlands are affected by this project.
Okay.
So if Mark Reed can have someone do a delineation by the second meeting in May, is that possible in the drought that we're in?
I'd have to check on that to confirm that that's possible. And I would get back to the commission on that aspect of it. But I just wanted to note that without permission from the property owners, no one, you or no one else, the abutters, cannot do a delineation on someone else's property. As the same with us, without permission from the abutter, we can't go on their property to do a delineation without permission of the property owner. It's under state law.
And so Mark Reed or Cassie, you're going to reach out to Mark Stinson again and try to get better information from him?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess what we should do is get a motion to continue this meeting or continue this public meeting to May 24th.
To continue to May 24th.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, roll call. Melissa Cody is absent with notice. Commissioner Busa is absent with notice. Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Commissioner Whitmore.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan, aye. Commissioner August
Aye.
and Commissioner Teffer.
Aye.
All right, the motion carries.
Okay, we'll be in touch with Cassie and the commission, and hopefully have everything ready for the 24th meeting.
All right, sounds good.
All right, thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thanks, Mark.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right, so a public hearing notice of intent filed by Fuss and O'Neill on behalf of the city of Easthampton for 99 Mount Tom Avenue. Is there someone here to speak to that?
Yes, good evening. My name is Michael Soares with Fuss and O'Neill. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, my name is Michael Soares. I'm a wetland scientist with Fuss and O'Neill. I also work in our natural resources group on a variety of restoration projects. We're filing this notice of intent on behalf of your town for a number of elements that are going to improve a number of resource areas for Brickyard Brook. So I can walk through some of the general characterization of the project, and then we can get into more of the details on the different elements of it.
Sure.
Essentially, we are working on a stormwater outfall repair just east of Cherry Street. The existing outfall, which is an 18-inch vitreous clay pipe, has failed over some period of time, probably decades ago. There was a head wall and an embankment wall there. Those have also failed. Right now, the failed pipe, it appears that once the pipe failed, stormwater started to undermine that outfall. The outfall then collapsed in, and then the erosion from stormwater continued to erode out any fill material that was under that pipe, and then the former bank. So that failure affected the land underwater and water body area, and then the bank there as well. So our project is to reconstruct that outfall, stabilize the bank. There is a small bordering vegetated wetland just across from the outfall. We have an enhancement plan to remove invasive species and plant native plantings in that small BVW, and also provide some bank stabilization downstream with some live plantings, as well as upstream, about maybe 100 feet upstream. There is an undercut bank that we want to install basically tree revetments or brushwood into the undercut bank, which will help slow the high flow at that location and over time rebuild that bank. This is connected to a bigger stormwater green infrastructure project on the streets that drain to this outfall. That includes the eastern half of Cherry Street and Mount Tom Avenue, as well as the Lux Avenue between those two streets. And what we have there is, I'd say about 30 bioretention planters proposed, and maybe 8 to 10 tree filters that will be taking in stormwater and infiltrating it at those locations, as opposed to putting it into the stormwater system. So the work in the jurisdictional area at the outfall is the focus of the NOI, but the stormwater improvements in the watershed for the outfall will help further the interests of the act. So this is an ecological restoration limited project. As I said, the existing condition right now is pretty poor. We have an actively eroding and head cutting problem at the outfall. And so we want to repair that. Repairing the bank and restoring the stream to where it was originally located, there will be some alterations that we need to do to bank and to land underwater. Essentially, some land underwater will be lost, but the land underwater was only created by the head cutting that occurred at the failed outfall. So we've gained some land underwater sort of artificially. We've also gained some bank at that location artificially. So in our NOI, we have a table in section 8, I believe it's table 8.1. You can see, or I can share it, you can see that there's some loss of bank and land underwater. Other resources are being converted to different resource areas, but there is a small amount of loss associated with rebuilding that outfall down to the closer to the stream area, and then having a scour protection area so that it's able to enter the stream as it did before. A small piece of the project is located in Riverfront area. Piggybacking on your last item, the stream itself, Brickyard Brook, at the location of our work is an intermittent stream as mapped by USGS and the state as well. There is a tributary that joins Brickyard Brook about maybe just around 200 feet downstream. And at that intersection, it becomes reclassified as a perennial stream. And so the arc of the riverfront area just touches some of the grading that we'll be doing around the outfall area. So just to notify you that the stormwater green infrastructure that I mentioned a few minutes ago, that is all up in the public right of way along the towns or the city streets, and are out of the jurisdictional area of being reviewed. And they're also categorized as improvements, and it's not new construction, it's improvement. And that entire project will actually reduce the amount of impervious area overall throughout the network of green infrastructure. I think I might have mentioned that we're going to be working on invasive removal. We've done site assessments. There are not, in our work area, there are no extensive stands of invasives. They're sort of sporadically distributed around the site. And so our plan is to remove them by hand. And then there will be plantings to fill those voids and create diversity with native plantings. Just trying to make sure I go through everything here.
Just as a note, Michael, I gave you co-host ability, so if you want to share anything on the screen, feel free to do so.
Thank you, Cassie. Well, why don't I show the plans, because visuals always help me a lot, and I recognize there's a lot of elements that I'm talking about here. So let's.
Yeah, I would appreciate being able to see where exactly this is happening.
Absolutely. So can you all see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll zoom in onto this just to give you a general idea of the scope of the project area. So as you can see, it's these eastern ends of Mount Tom and Cherry Street, this section of Lux. The restoration area for the outfall, the bank, the land underwater is this area just east of this home. I believe this is 66 and 67 Cherry Street. I'm not sure which is which. This work will be all occurring on the private parcel, which is 99 Mount Tom Avenue, the majority of which is part of Pascomic Conservation Trust's Brickyard Brook Conservation Area. And so the work we're going to be doing is actually within that conservation area. So let's move a little to we'll go to the first set to show some of the green infrastructure. So the green linear features are bioretention planters. These will have, once the street is redesigned, these will be incorporated to have curb cuts. I can zoom in a little bit. I don't want to cut anything off for anybody. So for example, you could see this one here has a small cut. This will be catching flow into a vegetated planter that has a depth to it with biofiltration media and will receive and infiltrate at that location and intercept it before it gets into the catch basin, which is immediately downstream. So this is a way to decentralize infiltration and also keep it out of the stormwater system, so we're not smashing it into Brickyard Brook, for lack of a more technical term. So that was the western end of the project area. This is the eastern end. We're seeing the same thing. The green circles, you can see them here on Cherry Street and up here on Mount Tom. Those are proposed tree box filters, I believe. And then we have this blue line here is our riverfront area coming off of where the perennial stream, the head of the perennial stream starts downstream of our project. Then our other light blue line is our, I believe is our buffer. Yes, that's our buffer on the delineation that we did last fall off on Brickyard Brook. If I can move forward to the project area. So just for everyone's orientation, we have Cherry Street over here on the left side coming in from the west. This dotted line is the stormwater pipe. This would be the new stormwater pipe. And it will have a new drainage manhole and will be exiting here. Currently, this yellow is the existing land underwater boundary, and the outfall has actually worked its way all the way back up here. I think I have a photo open I can show you. So that's looking at the current state of the outfall. We've got, this is the outfall, but this is actually a section of the pipe. The outfall was probably, I would say 10 to 15 feet longer and has collapsed. And this material, this bank on all sides is actively eroding at this time.
I don't know if
See the
you're,
photo.
yeah, we can't see it if you're trying to share a photo. Let's just stop and start again, unfortunately.
Oh. Sorry about that. Try again. How's that?
There we go.
That's good. Okay. Picture is valuable because this has been a problem for many decades, according to residents that we spoke to when we were on site. And we can see that, you know, without any vegetation, the slope is quite loose, near vertical in a lot of places, certainly vertical right over the pipe that's now become the outfall. And you can see how the land underwater and the bank have been artificially created because of the erosion head cutting backwards towards it. So our proposal is to bring the pipe back toward the stream itself, provide a scour pad. Let me switch back to the plan. So it pauses my screen sharing when I do. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you switch programs, you'll have to stop and start again each time.
Okay.
At least that's the only way I know how to do it.
Yeah, well, thank you, because I don't know how to do it. All right, we won't do that again. Is that all right?
Yep.
Okay. So as I was saying, we want to bring the pipe to a new head wall here. There will be a scour protection pad below that outfall to slow flow to prevent it from sort of shooting across as it is now, shooting across to undercut the bank on the river right bank. In this diagram, this plan, you can see a number of different elements. We have the cross hatching that you see is essentially the area that will be graded once the pipe is installed. The red areas just downstream are, let me see if I can get these call outs so you can read them. these are areas where we'll have the native plantings, both live stakes, and we have appropriate seed mixes from New England wetland plants, depending on whether it's more of a wetland location or the drier banks or upper slopes of the bank area. The small green triangle here is the 330 square feet riverfront area that falls into our project. That is also where the grading would be occurring. But this will be, this will be converted into a stable bank. And the way we're going to reconstruct and stabilize the banks is using soil lifts. If you're not familiar with soil lifts, these are essentially layers of material, soil encapsulated in a geotextile fabric that are built upon each other as you work your way back on the slope. And so the geotextile fabric is laid down, soil material is added, the fabric is then folded back, and then another geotextile fabric is laid down, then more soil. And so we encapsulate each lift, and then that will be seeded and planted in order that it's stabilized. That's our main concern here, is that the bank is stabilized and vegetated, and to create that sort of permanence in the resource again that's been lost through some of the stormwater action. I just want to go upstream a little bit. In addition to protecting this area, this bank right here, I mentioned it briefly earlier. This bank is currently being undercut and sort of slowly taking away the bank near the private residence right here, which is number 66, I believe. And our proposal here is to install tree revetments, which is basically small trees sized appropriately to the stream. Larger streams need larger trees. The trees will have their cut end facing upstream, the top of the tree facing downstream. They will be wired and anchored in place, and a small amount of soil will be brought in to fill in the undercut bank. And the way the trees work, it's sort of a process-based restoration approach of, when woody debris falls into a stream, it creates turbulence and it slows down water, allows sediment to drop. And by installing a number of small trees into that river left bank, and by that I mean on this side here, we will slow the flow on that side and prevent further undercutting of this bank, which basically it's getting undercut and then collapsing, and undercutting, getting collapsed. And so we want to shut that down and stop that from occurring anymore. So there will be some minor impact to the land underwater, but we're converting that land underwater into bank. That would be stabilized and vegetated. I can continue, but maybe I should stop here and see if, there's a bunch of different elements here. If you folks have questions about the project thus far, and I could focus on other parts of the plan or some construction details.
Cassie, I saw some photos. Are those photos you took on a site visit? Okay.
Yeah, I can share this if you like.
Sure.
Okay, hold on just a second. I just had it.
Oh, should
Yeah,
should I stop sharing?
Yes, if you don't mind. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, I went on and did a site visit with Diane Rossini, who is with the city's engineering department. And these are just some more, like a little closer pictures than the one. It looked, pretty much the same as what Michael had shown. But this is just a little more detailed pictures. You can see the, broken away, like existing culvert, it's worked its way back. Clearly, this is just kind of, there's that existing, the slope up is pretty, like you said, it's near vertical, very loose soil. This is looking back downstream with the culvert behind you or the outlet behind you. You can see there's some edge and it's kind of just the flowing stream and the markings that they've obviously already put out there. They've done flagging. There's one tree that's come down. The culvert is to my right in this image. So it's kind of looking upstream. It kind of goes around a bend here. Again, just that is a kind of zoomed out picture. You can see that's the broken pipe. There's the existing right there, and then sloping up. That's 66 Cherry over there, and then it's the other one, stream flowing to the right.
Do
Closer.
you mind if I just say something, Cassie?
Yeah, please.
It looks, because of that stream, that tree that's upstream, it looks like that area of the outflow pipe is actually like a little back eddy. So would the restoration, I guess my question is basically like, would the restorations that are put in place take care of any kind of back eddy action that might erode away that area? My guess is yes, but just something I know.
If I may answer, absolutely. Yeah, we will bring the bank out to match the existing natural bank line. So it's a good point. There will not be an eddy in that action undercutting other trees or vegetation there.
And that was the last picture. So that's pretty much it too. Yeah. So if you guys, I think Jay, if it's all right with you, you guys can turn it over to questions. I can stop sharing and I can pull the plan back up or.
Sure. Yeah, let's maybe pull that the last plan scene back up.
Okay.
Are there any questions from commissioners?
I have good questions.
Go for it.
Okay. So let me just like administratively, Casimir, this is something that's already been addressed, but since Pascomic Trust is a property owner, have they like approved the notice of intent, signed the notice of intent, or I assume that they are okay with work on their property is the big picture question.
It's a private residence, and the owner has signed off. The Conservation Trust has an easement on the property. I should have made that more clear. They have an easement on the property, but the owner, Ms. Walsh, is aware of the project and has signed off on the NOI. Has signed the NOI, rather. Let's say that.
Okay. And seeing DEP's comments, they commented on the applicability of an ecological restoration type project. And I guess I'm wondering if you had thoughts on that, and also thoughts on, you applied as an ecological restoration limited project, and why limited and not full, and how do you like fit into ecological restoration project criteria?
I think your first question was regarding Mr. Stinson's comments.
Yep.
So I read his comments to, he was trying to he was highlighting the fact that restoration projects are associated with anthropogenic disturbance or anthropogenic impacts to resource areas. In our NOI, and I think you can, if you see it in aerials as well, the brook, it's got a undeveloped belt along the river, but I would say, or along the brook rather, but the land use on either side of it is most certainly anthropogenic. You have a dense residential development, or neighborhood to the west, agricultural fields to the east, and the particular degradation that we're trying to address is directly related to this failed infrastructure that has been and will continue to essentially wash away the bank at this location and potentially at some point in time, jeopardize private property on that west bank. So I see the overall land use as anthropogenic, as well as the particular infrastructure that's causing the degradation that we're trying to repair. As for restoration limited, I believe the ecological restoration has a list of types of projects, and we did not see this work in that list. And we found that it was more appropriate to be under the limited category.
Okay. I guess, are there other, do you need other permits from other agencies? And, you know, there's like a list of things to do. Do you have to file with the advertise the environmental monitor and you know, get other state permits first if there are any, or not?
We did file with the environmental monitor. We have notified abutters at about 10 days ago. We posted the legal ad. We do have to file a self-verification, SVN, self-verification notification form with the Army Corps, which I'm working on this week. We did submit this to DEP. I noticed in the agenda that it said file number pending, but we do have a file number. It is, as you can see, 151-0313.
Yeah, I can confirm that. The reason that it's listed that way on the agenda is because I had to post the agenda before we received that.
I know it's like 3 hours before.
Yeah,
we got it.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
And it's okay. We don't need the file number before opening the hearing. We do need it to close, but we have it, so.
I guess one thing that has tripped me up on ecological restoration projects before is 310 CMR 10-11. It says the applicant must take the following actions before filing a notice of intent for an ecological restoration project or for approval as an ecological restoration limited project. And one of those is 14 days prior to filing the notice of intent, submit a publication or submit an ad in the environmental monitor.
Yeah, that's in the NOI packet.
Oh, okay.
That should be included as one of our attachments.
Okay, I must have misunderstood what you said a second ago. Oh yeah, okay, attachment C. Yep, okay, I got it. All right.
Sorry, I confused you there.
No problem. Okay. And one question I have too is like, what exactly, how far does this notice of intent go? Does it cover the stormwater improvements in the neighborhoods, or is that just kind of background information? And are we just being asked to decide on the outfall and bank related things and that kind of thing?
It's the latter. Primarily, the reason I'm zooming out is so you can see the extent of riverfront area. And so the resource, in terms of impacts to resource areas, you are focused on the work along the bank, in the LUWW, in the riverfront area. The road work is within the public right-of-way, within impervious already developed areas, and are also non-jurisdictional areas. But they provide a lot of context for, you know, if we just repaired the pipe, that would help a lot, and that would rebuild the bank, right? We'd stabilize the bank, vegetate it, reconstruct it. But by also providing this amount of green infrastructure, if you really want to have some fun reading, you could go to the hydraulic analysis memorandum. That's our last appendix. And our engineer, I mean, it's really interesting, the change that you see pre and post improvement with the amount of stormwater that will be projected to come out of this outfall. It's going to be a significant decrease. So we brought that in just to provide the context of how this will be improved, not just through that direct work in the resource areas, but also in the Cherry Street neighborhood.
Okay.
Are these, sorry to interrupt, are these, the green infrastructure, is that planned to be put into place across Easthampton eventually, or is this something that's sort of beta testing here?
This design is specific to this neighborhood, but it's for communities that are interested. It can be applied as far and wide as they're interested in. Yeah. So no, this is not part of a larger. But if your town was interested, there's potential for that.
Thanks.
Okay. Another question I have is about bordering land subject to flooding, and if that has, like, if the limits of that have been defined, and what your thoughts are relative to those performance standards.
Yeah, I believe I believe that's based on you know, either 100-year floodplain or modeling that shows bordering land subject to flooding could occur. And you know, my understanding from the analysis was that that is not an issue at this site, this location. And so we don't have that. We don't have that jurisdictional area to be concerned about.
I guess my thought is that we just don't know what the boundaries are. That's something I might need a little more clarification on. In addition, access to that southern area where tree revetment is proposed. I was wondering how you plan to access that area.
Good question. So the owners of 66 and 67 Cherry Street have already agreed for equipment access. Sort of their property line is kind of rides that that stormwater pipe heading towards the brook. All of the work at the tree revetment area would be done by people just walking over there. So there would be no equipment that would be needed to access that location. And the same goes with any temporary water diversions with cofferdams. That would all be done with sandbags and people carrying them into certain locations. So the location for heavy equipment will be up in this area and not traveling upstream towards that tree revetment area. And just quickly to go back to your last question, just looking at Mass GIS Oliver, there's no flood zones mapped in the project area. And so my understanding is that the bordering land subject to flooding is not a resource area that we have to contend with.
Let me just look at the regulation there. 10.57. Oops. Back in the old days when we had paper printouts of regulations, it was faster. Okay, so bordering land subject to flooding is an area with low, flat, topographically, was an area with low, flat, topographically adjacent to and inundated by floodwaters rising from creeks, rivers, streams, ponds, or lakes. It extends from the banks. Critical to prediction of the acts. The boundary is the estimated maximum lateral extent of floodwater, which will theoretically result from a statistical 100-year frequency storm. Said boundary shall be that determined by reference to the most recently available flood profile data for the community. Where national flood, where NFIP profile data is unavailable, the boundary shall be the maximum lateral extent of floodwater which has been observed or recorded. In the event of a conflict, the issuing authority may require the applicant to determine the boundary by engineering calculations, which shall be, etc. So my take on that is consistent with what I've understood in the past, which is that just because you don't have it mapped doesn't mean that you don't have the resource area. And knowing where the resource area boundary is for bordering land subject to flooding in particular may be important where grading changes are being proposed, or at least we'll need to make sure that we are meeting the performance standards appropriately.
I will, I won't dive into our hydraulic analysis memorandum right now. I believe the mapping for your area is up to date, but I can verify that and go back to our engineer in terms of the hydraulic analysis they did. I would also say, just informally, this the overall morphology of this area is not quite connected to broad flats adjacent to the stream. It's fairly steep. The BVW that we did delineate is, it's a little sort of floodplain area before the steeper upland slope starts. So I don't think we'll find it there, but I want to do the due diligence that you're asking for and answer your question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just like a general characteristic of the area, but if it's a narrower river system, that just means you have skinnier BLSF in my experience.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Yep.
Okay, I can find that. I assume we'll continue that. I'm closing our conversation, but if we're going to continue until next meeting, we can answer that question for you at the next meeting.
Yep. Another question I have is, do you think the stream is like vertically stable in this reach, or is it like, is there a potential of it, down cutting or at grading, I guess? And is that a factor that could have contributed to some of the erosion at the outfall? And maybe that doesn't really, I think it would just be a useful piece of information to know. I'm kind of picturing if the stream like drops, a foot or two, does what is the stone protection end up looking like in the long term?
That's a good, yeah. I mean, I walked from the confluence that's below, which is, probably 200 or 250 feet downstream of the outfall, and then upstream, beyond 66 Cherry. And I can't say there's any significant elevation changes in the stream. It's a very sandy, medium coarse sand stream bed. Not a lot of rock. There's not a sort of cataracts or riffle and pool system. it's really just kind of an incised stream that meanders a little bit, but is really kind of down in that steep area and has been there for some time, I think. So I didn't see any indication that there is down cutting or a potential for that. And I think the work that we have proposed would even lessen the possibility of those sorts of impacts.
Okay. All right. Did you mention cofferdams and diversion, or am I getting my hearings mixed up?
No, I did.
Okay.
So you're paying attention.
All right.
So let me just go back up to a better representation to show you the what we have in mind for that. So we're focused again on this restoration area. Okay, everybody can see that. So a lot of black lines. The temporary cofferdam would be the thick black line, which would be constructed out of sandbags. And the idea is to do the work in the low flow season as much as possible. We've already stated in the NOI that whoever would be doing the work would be doing it in the low flow time of year and be watching the weather for about a week or 2 weeks out to make sure they're getting the best possible conditions. But as a contingency, the cofferdam, rather than being perpendicular to flow, would be parallel to flow. And because we're only working on one bank, on the river left bank, the cofferdam can be set up to effectively allow for a bypass of the stream. So we could dewater the bank that we're working on in our work area, but still allow the stream to flow on the river right side of the black line, which would be the temporary cofferdam. And again, it would be sandbags, so it wouldn't be any large equipment or anything used to construct or deconstruct that.
And is dewatering, like pumping and discharge, proposed?
I don't think this is not a long-term project. We're probably talking about 10 days, 2 weeks of work. And so I think low flow, also just given the nature of this stream, it's a fairly, even in November, it was only a couple inches deep. So I think in summertime, when this work would be done, dewatering would not be needed. I guess when I said dewatering, I meant by the nature of the dam holding water back out of the work area, but pumps are not expected to be needed.
Okay. I'm jumping around a lot too. Stormwater permit. I think the application said right at the beginning that you didn't think one was necessary.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. What is the total, what is the total roadway area disturbance? Or is it, are the roads being milled and overlaid, or are they being totally full depth reconstruction and that kind of thing? Or?
That's a good, I'm not familiar with that, the total road construction. I believe that it is replacement of underground utilities and repaving of the road. And the town engineering department recognized this as an opportunity to also provide some stormwater infrastructure at the same time. I know there is an overall decrease in impervious area for the entire project up in the GI project. So we're not there's no total addition of impervious area. because the planters will be taking some impervious area.
Yep. It's been a while since I looked at applicability of the stormwater ordinance, but I guess I'm wondering if that, if that roadway work would trigger a stormwater permit.
I think we have interpreted that as being not new construction, but redevelopment or reconstruction. And I believe the way I can go to that section in our NOI so we can all look at it together.
Redevelopment just means that you don't have to meet all of the stormwater standards the same way. It's there's still a permit required, however.
So I just to follow up on our reasoning here, it's our understanding that no portion of the project requires a city stormwater permit for the following reasons. It does not fall under the requirement for quote unquote construction activities and subdivisions disturbing greater than or 1 equal to an acre. So we're not removing vegetation or topsoil under that first point, number one. It's entirely within existing disturbed areas with the exception of the outfall. And under 2, the work falls under the definition of redevelopment, which is defined to include the following projects: maintenance and improvement of existing roadways, including widening less than a single lane, adding shoulders, correcting substandard intersections, improving existing drainage, and repaving. And also development, rehabilitation, expansion, and phased projects on previously developed sites, provided the redevelopment results in no net increase in impervious area. And remedial projects specifically designed to provide improved stormwater management. And then number 3, the project will not trip the threshold of resulting in an increase of 5,000 square feet of impervious area or an additional 10 parking spaces. So using those definitions is how we came to our conclusion that the permit was not required.
I guess I feel like I need to let that sink in a little bit. I guess I'm done with questions for now.
Are there any other commissioners that have questions? Deborah?
Yes. Could you tell us if you feel this is a 10-day to a 2-week project? Will there be a need for a stockpile area?
A stockpile area?
Yes.
I don't believe so. I mean, we have the material that is the debris that's in the stream right now, directly under the outfall. We're going to remove that and dispose of that. I don't think that will need to be stockpiled. It's not a significant amount of material. And my understanding is that once construction begins, the material will be coming in and being used that day and being in place that day. So we haven't discussed stockpiling, so I don't believe so. If we do, we certainly have this space up on the, oh my gosh, I keep switching what I'm looking at. From the work access area off of Cherry Street, it could always be utilized at the dead end area where we're bringing in the heavy equipment.
And if you do have to use that, how long do you think that it would be there?
I don't think very long, maybe it's hard to say. Not very long, a day or two. I mean, the idea is to, once the soil lifts are being built with that fill material and the geotextile encapsulating it, they want to go through that all in a sequence so that it's sort of from A to Z in one process. And so it would be pretty fairly quick.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from commissioners?
It's Mike, real quick. The O&M plan, is there going to be ongoing invasive control after, say, a certificate of compliance has been written? I mean, is the PCT going to maintain invasives in the area? I think maybe that was one of the DEP comments.
Yeah, it's a good comment and it's a good question. We do have in the O&M that at least monitoring needs to be conducted to make sure that invasives that were removed don't come back, or that the voids created by removed invasives don't fill with new invasives rather than the natives that we want to establish there. I'm not sure in terms of the town's partnership with the trust, if the town is the applicant, if the town would take on the O&M. I do see, and I'm sure it's been discussed, that the trust could fill that role as well, or in partnership with the town to do that monitoring for the long term. We also have recommended that there should be monitoring of the outfall for some period of time so that it's functioning the way it's supposed to be.
Are there next steps for that piece? Or does the commission feel special conditions that needs to be defined? Or we can pick it up later?
I can say that we certainly have had similar special conditions in the past that, specify that they would exist in perpetuity, kind of like what Mark Simpson said in his comment. So I think there's certainly precedent for the commission to have something like that. I do think it's an interesting question of like, who would take ownership of that, considering that the property is owned, 99 Mount Tom Ave is owned by this other person, and then the city is trying to do this work, and then PCT obviously has an easement there. So it's like, maybe we could see clarification on who would take ownership of this O&M.
May I add something?
Oh, please.
I do know that Pascomic has been aware of this project from the beginning and is being, as part of the conversation in terms of what native species are going to be planted. And so all I'm trying to say is they have a vested interest in the success of the project and are already involved in some of the conversations. So it's possible they're already interested or aware of some kind of monitoring like that. And I'm sure they monitor the property already as a land steward.
That's good to know. I think, I don't know if it would be something that the commission would like, is some kind of just written maybe agreement saying like, these are the people who are going to take ownership of the O&M. I don't know if that's something that the commission thinks would be appropriate just to have before you issued it in order, if you were planning to do so. Or it could be a pre-construction requirement as well.
Any other commissioner questions? Any questions from the public? All right, so I guess we should get a motion to continue this to May 10th. You're going to look into some, Michael, you're going to look into some hydro analysis stuff, and we can talk about the O&M things at that next meeting also. But
yes, we'll address the bordering land subject to flooding, and the O&M.
And Dan's going to think about stormwater.
Right. If we have anything to follow up on that, please let me know and we can address that as well.
Yeah, I guess so. I've been like scrolling a little bit here. I don't quite agree with the reasoning on why a stormwater permit is not required, although I'm not convinced that one is required. And I'm looking at the provision for I think it's normal maintenance of roadways. I've lost my ordinance in all the browser windows here. I lost it. But so my take on the regulations is that, if it's full depth reconstruction of the roadways, or if there is disturbance of greater than an acre, then, the intent and the way I read the regulations too is that a stormwater permit would be required, with the reasoning being like just, erosion sediment control, making sure that's like adequately controlled and that kind of thing. And for me, like the removal of the pavement would count as a disturbance for the purposes of that calculation. But it does look like in the regulations, and I lost my browser window, but it does look like there is an exemption. Yeah, oh, here it is, an exemption for number 9, routine maintenance to existing town roads that is performed to maintain the original width, line, grade, hydraulic capacity, original purpose of the roadway. So I guess I would want to better understand the work and then maybe get confirmation from the commission, if that's what the applicant thought was appropriate, that too, is what the commission would be thinking. So I guess that's my thought process on it. But a redevelopment project, the purpose of those provisions is definitely not to not have to do a stormwater permit, but it is instead to provide a different set of criteria for if the project meets that, if the project qualifies for that, essentially.
Okay, so just for my own preparation for next meeting, are you saying, I just want to, you feel that it is not required, or we should look into the fact that it may be required?
Well, I guess that was my roundabout way of saying that. Do we think this project qualifies as normal maintenance of a town roadway?
Is that to me?
That's to everybody.
Oh,
so
okay.
the commission,
I would say yes.
unless there's a different way that this falls into the stormwater regulations, I would think that you would be asking the commission to agree with you that this is a normal maintenance of a town-owned roadway, or routine maintenance to existing town roads.
I would say if it was number 9 that you just read, or something like the exemption that you read, fit the description of this project to me.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I'd like to I guess I'd like the other commissioner's opinion on that. And I guess I'd feel like, so what is the extent of the disturbance to the roadway that is planned? We'll need to know that in order to make that finding.
So are you addressing me?
Yes.
Sorry. Sorry.
We're not used to not having Melissa here. We don't know what to do.
I will follow up with your engineering department. I understand it to be a repaving and replacement of some or all utilities under the road surface.
Okay.
So it's not a change in the overall coverage or footprint of the roads themselves. It's basically a replacement / maintenance project.
Okay.
It's Mike, but I mean, is that something completely different than does this fall under the limited project? That road? I mean, we're talking about restoring the resource area. So is the roadway related to that, or is that something completely different?
I mean, they're connected, but they are different parts of a larger project. So the stormwater permit, if I understand your regs correctly, are specific to the green infrastructure part of this. And then the NOI is focused more on the work at Brickyard Brook.
Right. So that's how I agree with that. I think we could, in my mind, we could act on the Brickyard Brook work and then like take care of the stormwater stuff for the roadway work later if we thought we needed to.
Yeah, I was confused if that road work fell into the restoration, or if it was part of it, or it falls outside of the limited restoration project. I'm still confused on that aspect.
We could have left that out of the NOI and just talked about the, I mean, Fuss and O'Neill could have left out the larger green infrastructure description here.
Mm-hmm.
The reason because it's a stormwater outfall that we're repairing and restoring those resource areas at the outfall, we found it, significantly related that the green infrastructure is going to greatly reduce, and attenuate what the kind of flow and also the non-point source pollution that will be coming out of that outfall. All that will be significantly decreased. So it's included as part of the context of the jurisdictional part of the NOI that we're talking about. There's a lot of elements. I know it's a lot to bring together in one conversation. It'll be great when it's done.
So administratively, it sounds like to me that what we're discussing, what this public hearing right now is about, is the work that's kind of within your red box there on the screen. Everything that's happening within the jurisdictional areas, resource areas, is what this NOI is about. Potentially, we could open a different meeting for the rest of the work. It might need a stormwater permit. I don't know if the work is going up, if the road work is going up for any permitting with like the planning board or anything like that. Because that's when it comes to stormwater, it's either us or planning. And we have done that before. We've had meetings just for stormwater for projects that are totally outside of the jurisdiction of the commission in terms of resource areas. So that could be up to discussion at the next meeting. Maybe we'll do a little digging and we can make that determination at the next meeting and see if that needs to happen or not.
Good idea.
Anything else, or we want to do a motion to continue to May 10th at 6 p.m.?
I'll move to continue to May 10th at 6 p.m.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Commissioner Cody is absent with notice. Commissioner Busso is absent with notice. Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Commissioner Whitmore.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan, aye. Commissioner August.
Aye.
And Commissioner Teffer.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. All right.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Yep. Have a good night, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, request for certificate of compliances. I don't see anything.
Yeah, so if we want to, if we can, I have a list. So there's other people here for a lot of the project updates, and I was just
Okay.
wanted to see if we could take them out of order. The first one, just, in terms of how it's listed on the agenda, the first one is item 7I, which is for, I believe that is for River Valley Co-op,
Okay.
228 Northampton Street. I think someone needs to motion to take it out of order, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I guess so, because we're
Yeah,
gonna,
so let's, can I have a motion to take 7I out of order?
Motion to take 7I out of order.
Second.
Do I need to do a roll call vote on this? Okay. All right, River Valley
Aye.
Co-op.
yeah, so I had, at the last meeting we had talked about, I had done that just general site visit to River Valley, and there was questions about some standing water in some of the stormwater basins on site, particularly one in the rear, and then there's one kind of in the front near the side street. I think Jeff Squire is nice enough to join us to speak to that. If you have any updates, Jeff, that would be really appreciated.
Yeah, so I mean, I did stop out there in the last week, just take a look and make sure I knew what what the concerns were. And so the level lip spreader area that's holding water at the moment is at the back of the site. It's if I can share
Oh,
my
yeah.
screen, I can just show you real quick where it is so everybody knows.
There you go. Now you're a co-host.
Great. So if everybody can see this, this is, so Easthampton Route 10 is at the bottom of the sheet here. This is the back of the site. It's particularly this level spreader here. The only thing that this drainage system or this component collects is there's a subsurface drain right here to collect groundwater and surface water coming down the hill toward the parking lot and intercept that and direct it away from the parking lot. The elevation of this basin, the bottom of this is about a foot lower than this outlet right now. So it's probably in the neighborhood of 185 and a half in that neighborhood. I think, this basin sits a little bit higher. All of this appeared dry. I didn't see any water at this outlet or out here, all of which are, particularly this one is a lower elevation. And yeah, and I know there's still a lot of construction activity happening on the north side of the site. So, I think, obviously there's still ongoing construction. I do want to understand a little bit why that's, this particular level spreader is holding water. It may have been that they, just excavated it a little bit too deeply or whatever. We can certainly fill it in with stone. I suspect as groundwater subsides a little bit and the site is is stabilized and they wrap up their drainage work, we'll see some improvements, but at the very least we'll certainly keep track of it and keep an eye on it. And if it doesn't seem to be drying out, we certainly can raise the bottom elevation of this outlet a little bit. It doesn't get a lot of flow, like I said. It is just intercepting groundwater with a perforated pipe. So it's not like it gets a lot of velocity coming out of there. It's really just intended to dissipate any flows coming out of that flared end. So we do have the ability to fill that in a little bit and still not reduce its functionality. So we will keep an eye on it.
Thank you. I didn't know if any commissioners had any other questions about that, but I think that's kind of it.
Any other questions? Cassie, is there anyone else here for anything out of sequence?
Yeah, if we could, the next one I'd like to take would be item 7K, which is the Ferry Street intersection.
All right, can I get a motion to take 7K out of order?
Motion to take 7K out of order.
Second.
All right.
Okay, so this one is for a kind of similar to what we just did with 50 Florence. There was a proposed change. They're trying to determine if this change I mean, there's really three options. One, I think that an argument could be made that the change is insignificant enough that might just need administrative approval. Or otherwise, they're trying to determine if the change could be appropriate for an amended order of conditions, or if you guys think that you would require a new NOI. And so kind of in an informal way, we're trying to advise the permittee what you guys think would be appropriate next steps for these proposed changes. And I'll turn it over, Stephanie McDonald is here from McMahon to speak to it. And I can make you a co-host, Stephanie, sorry.
Okay, thanks. My computer, I don't know if you can hear me, all of a sudden internet is being really spotty.
Oh, I have the letter you sent me if you want me to share that instead. I can do that for you.
Sure. And yeah, I can speak to it. My literally is switching screens right now, so I'm going to try to, of course. So basically, if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry, everything's blacking out. So we have a project on Ferry Street, which was the roundabout at intersections of Love Field and Pleasant Street. And we're wrapping up construction with that project right now. And the city has gone back and would like to do a couple other improvements in addition as part of this project. Some help with the entrance to Millside Park. So, and part of this work is to kind of enhance the Manhan Rail Trail and also just to provide some positive drainage to literally the driveway into Millside Park. So I guess I'll speak to the first, just a concrete pad is proposed. And this is all, I should say, within the 100-foot buffer to Lower Mill Pond Dam, which yes, you can see in the yellow highlight. So the city would like to propose a 4x4 concrete pad to be available to display some public art, just to again enhance the area and just culture of Easthampton in that vicinity. That's what we're proposing. And again, as you can see, that's within the buffer. And then the bigger item, which I think is still minor, is to kind of mill, but not mill. We're thinking of shimming or reconstructing, basically regrading this area slightly just to create, again, positive drainage. So right now, if you're coming from the Ferry Street intersection, at the bottom of the page, which is kind of easterly along there, it kind of just sits, the water, it's just very flat. So the city would like to basically lower the rim elevation of an existing catch basin that you can see, and just kind of shim and work with the grades a little bit, just again to create that area to promote the water to go into that catch basin, which it was originally intended to do. The area is currently paved. And again, we just be essentially, I don't think we'd be lowering the areas too much, but working with it with the grades. And it's, as you can see, it's about what, 55 by 24 feet wide area we'd work with within that area. And again, work from where I show the extents is kind of where from Ferry Street, we already kind of repaved. That was the end of the paving, literally at the driveway. And this, we're going to go 55 feet further, which was in our original project boundary. So again, the work is minor, but it is within the buffer of Lower Mill Pond Dam. And the aspects are just to, again, to promote positive drainage and to create a concrete pad for some artwork. Are there any questions?
So so really, I mean, the easiest outcome would be just like, we all agree that this is a minor modification and that an amended order of conditions is not necessary. Is that correct? Cassie or Stephanie?
Oh yeah, it's kind of like it's up for you guys to decide. It could be, you could decide that this is so minor of a change that it just is something that's worthy of what I would consider to be administrative approval. And you just you take a vote right now and say like, you approve of this change. You don't need to go for it, the amended order. You could decide that you think an amended order is appropriate and say, come back to us with a formal, amended order. So that would mean there would need to, you would have a public hearing for it on the next agenda. They would need to do a butter notification and a legal advertisement in advance of it and submit the plan to DEP. And then that would be, kind of a hearing. You'd figure out what you wanted to change. I would amend the original order and send that out to them if you guys voted on it. And then the third option would to say, no, this change doesn't meet the DEP policy. It's changing the scope of the work and it's increasing the amount of disturbance so that it requires a new notice of intent.
Yep. So I guess my feeling is that it's not really a big deal. I mean, it's right next to the project site and it's in buffer zone. There's no resource area impact. So we couldn't, in my opinion, we couldn't really approve like new resource area impacts as like a minor modification, but I'm assuming this will be really quick, like a day or two to implement, and then no one will know anything happened other than some saw cut lines and some fresh pavement. So for me, it would be, I'd be fine with like just calling it a minor modification and saying that an amended order is not necessary. I don't know what others think.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
I don't think I have an issue, but just orientation purposes, where is this? Where's north?
North is to the right. It's kind of crooked. This is right below Pleasant Street at the new roundabout, Pleasant Love
Okay.
Fields. And this is the entrance to Millside Park, right across.
Okay.
So
So
we're right
that
at
air
the top next to this parking lot is part of the American Legion.
and Mill
That
Pond
you see
to
to
the
the
right.
top
And Mill Pond
is
to
to the
the right.
bottom,
Bottom.
the bottom of the page.
Okay, thank you.
Nope, it's to the bottom where the buffer line hits. Yep.
Okay, I'm okay. Thank you.
Do you want to make that motion to amend the order of conditions?
Well, we wouldn't be moving to amend it. We would just be like basically calling it a minor modification or field change or whatever, something like that.
So just make a motion that it's a minor modification and that we approve it, or?
Yeah, I'll move that. I'll move that the proposed work is a minor modification and that they can proceed without an amended order of conditions.
Can I get a second? Okay.
Second.
Roll call. Commissioner Cody is absent with notice. Commissioner Busa is absent with notice. Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Commissioner Whittemore.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan, aye. Commissioner August.
Aye.
And Commissioner Teffer.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, Stephanie, I'll send you a letter that just says that, just so that there's like, you have a formal thing saying that that's the case.
Perfect.
Thank you for explaining that.
Yep, no worries. Thanks for sharing your screen. Sorry about the connection issues.
That's no problem at all.
Good night.
All right, good night.
Right.
All right, the next item I would request to take would be item 7M, which is for Turner Park Street, the school project.
Sorry, Cassie, can I interrupt?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I have to take off for the night, but I think we're good on quorum. Thank you.
All right, good night.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to take 7M out of order?
So moved.
Done.
Second.
All right, so Easthampton School Committee.
Yeah, so I'm going to turn it over to, I know Joel Kent is here from Fontaine Brothers and Matt Broussard and Dave Fontaine. So there was a storm event on the 15th, April 15th, and there was turbid water seen coming out of a pipe that's located on the parcel that the school is associated with, the school project is associated with. So there was concerns about taking action to fix that, and they did take action really quickly. And there might be larger actions that need to be taken, more large scale actions. So hopefully we're going to hear about that. And then also speaking about the basin at the rear of the property that we discussed was retaining water pretty consistently. And then just general, at the last meeting, we also discussed wanting to hear about erosion controls in a general sense, and kind of action plans going forward, how that would be. So Joel, I'll turn it over to you or whoever from the board now.
That's great. Thank you, Cassie. Again, I'm Joel Kent with Fontaine Brothers, and we're the general contractor on the project. We've been working with Cassie, and Commissioner Ryan has been out several times to walk with us, and we have a very good site contractor out there, Gagliarducci Construction. So together we've been out on site for about 16 months now. Project's moving right along. We have had recently these couple of storm events. We didn't perform quite as well as we had been performing for the better part of a year and a half before, and we had a couple issues that we're kind of looking at with, we have Matt Broussard on from Niche Engineering, the project civil engineer, that we're kind of looking at maybe longer term things that we might want to do that, or might want to approach the commission about doing. But kind of in the near term, so with the site being frozen for the better part of the winter, and with the soils out there being really difficult to work with in the spring, the wet weather, we haven't had the benefit of the full complement of the site contractors' equipment and crews on site day to day. They've specifically been out there to do maintenance on erosion controls and things like that. But I think from my perspective, the biggest thing going forward is that we have the full crew back. That was starting site work again as of last week. And I just think we're in a much better position to be proactive and to be dealing with the minor things that come up and need to be maintained during the course of the project. Beyond that, because we did have these couple incidents that kind of that came up past couple weeks, we've kind of just taken a wholesale look at everything we're doing out there and tried to create kind of a belt and suspenders approach to what we're doing. So we had the problem with a corrugated metal pipe that's abandoned, an existing pipe that was likely sourcing groundwater and discharging it into the brook. So that pipe previously wasn't really meant to be dealt with. It was supposed to stay where it was. But in the meantime, while we look at with the design team what our options are there, we've installed a turbidity curtain down there to protect the brook. We also brought out a vac truck last week, cleaned every structure on site, replaced every silt sack on site. At areas of particular concern, we installed additional wattles and silt fence. We've installed flock logs in all the structures on site. So we really just sat down with our site contractor and tried to look at everything that we could do within the SWIP and beyond that to make sure that we're going above and beyond to make sure we're taking care of the site. And like I said, I do think that we're in a much better position today than we were even a couple of weeks ago. So. And beyond that, I know Matt from Niche, and we were out looking this week at that corrugated metal pipe and the detention basin out back, and there's some things we're kind of working through with the design team. But Matt, if do you want to speak to that at all?
Sure. I mean, a couple of things I would offer in terms of the corrugated metal pipe that's on the, it's basically at the end of the northerly level spreader on the east side of the site. If the commissioners recall, we actually proposed some modifications to that level spreader. This is last year in response to some differing site conditions for that bank. So that pipe that's there originally was a little bit outside of the limit of work of that spreader. So now that area is expanded, it's completed and installed. Basically, it's right at the end of it. So we kind of agree after we talked with everyone on site last week that it probably makes sense to pull a section of that pipe out, and the operation in doing that is not going to involve any earth moving, any regrading. It's really just going to be a matter of moving some of the existing stone in the level spreader, pulling part of the pipe out, sealing it, and then placing the stone back. So it's not going to, there's no risks to the brook or the bank or anything like that by doing that. And we agree that it's probably, when all said and done, is probably the best approach to kind of finalize that area. The other thing I would offer too is, we've been talking about this internally at, I'm with Niche Engineering. I meant anyone mentioned that before, but some of particular problems with sites like this that have such high silt and clay soil content in the soil. Very difficult site to deal with. From what we see and from what we've seen on site last week, the steps that the contractor's now taking to kind of button things up. It appears to be doing everything they can do. One of the things I would just point out to the commission is, regardless of what they do, it is possible that there'll be noticeable coloration in some of the discharges from the site. It's basically unavoidable on sites like this with these types of soils, primarily because none of the erosion control measures that are used on any construction site are capable, for the most part, of trapping silt and particularly clay particles. And it takes a very, very tiny bit of that material in the flow stream to make for turbidity to be visible. So just to throw that out there. So if something is noticed later, it doesn't mean that, and I think we noted this in our field report we wrote up for last week. The objective, or the primary objective for site erosion control measures, is to prevent sediment transport, which is much different than slight turbid conditions during a storm event. When we were there last week, we didn't observe any sediment deposition offsite. There was some mild coloration in some of the duff, the leaf litter and stuff near the at the outfall to the bioretention area, but we didn't see any sediment movement, which is really kind of the hot button that we think should be kind of watched out for. So we didn't see any of that happening. So that's about all I have to offer on that front. There's another matter, Cassie, that I reached out to you about that we can talk about afterward, if that's appropriate, related to the bioretention area. That's kind of, if anyone has any questions about anything I just threw out there, be happy to answer those.
You're giving me flashbacks to my own projects with the silt issue.
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, and again, we're contracted. We're an agent of the city. We're not working with Fontaine or Gagliarducci. So I'm not giving them a kind of a cheerleading session here or anything. I'm just pointing out that it legitimately is a very difficult problem to deal with, and that's primarily, as far as I know, it's why it's not really addressed in the Wetland Protection Act, those regulations and the performance standards associated with construction site monitoring. It's a sediment deposition issue that's really what the focus of all that, of the regulations and the controls are. And from what I just to repeat, I'm not seeing any of that. There isn't even there's no sediment deposition or coloring in the level spreader out in the front. Like it's I think when they've had these issues, it's been kind of a flow through of just some small concentration of silt or clay in the flow stream.
So so it sounds like there's two different things you're talking about. One is just, having a little bit of color or cloudiness in the stormwater discharge, but that's kind of separate from the pulling back of the pipe over by the level spreader.
That's,
or am I mixed up?
No, the issue that that the site contractor pointed out with the 15-inch pipe, the issue with that pipe is that the bottom of it is deteriorated. It's basically just an open shell on the bottom. They're concerned now that the extent of the level spreader is basically sitting on top of that pipe, that what could be happening is water is just, shooting through the stone in the level spreader, entering that pipe and causing, potentially soil movement and undermining of that pipe. That's what their concern is. And we agree that that's a legitimate concern, and it's something that's relatively easy to deal with by removing it. So we're kind of on board with that work.
Okay. At this point, are you asking for our opinion on that, or is that like this is just an update and that will be something forthcoming on that topic?
Joel, I'm here to ask an opinion and permission about another item.
Okay.
Semi-related. We can talk about that in a minute.
So in relation to that corrugated metal pipe, I think we would probably have some type of documentation at some point that we would share with the commission. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like you're aware that there are some minor issues and everyone's doing their best to work on them. This is my takeaway for tonight, our takeaway for tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely have the full attention of everybody involved. And it's the most important thing we're dealing with on site right now. So it's on everybody, it's on the forefront of everybody's mind, I should say.
Okay, very good.
Joel and Matt, one quick question. Hi, everybody. It's David Fontaine. Just in regards to potentially removing that corrugated pipe that has been existing and was, originally scheduled to remain, but we believe may have deteriorated. One of our things that we wanted to get clarification on is that pipe extends slightly beyond the limit of work, and that's the reason that it was, hasn't been removed so far. So if it's the recommendation of niche that be removed and replaced with stone, we just wanted to make sure we didn't do that work without, conferencing with the commission and getting your buy-in on that. So is that something that we need to officially submit on or discuss, or is it just that we can execute that recommendation if it's the recommendation of niche?
I mean, I'll just add on to that, Dave. I mean, it's extending beyond the limit of work, but part of that extension is literally that it's sticking out of the ground in the front of the level spreader, so to pull it out, it's not going to require, an extension of the limit of work insofar as additional bank disturbance or excavation work, which I think is the, big difference there.
Agreed. I think when we went out there, we agreed it's probably something that's prudent to do and that could only improve the condition. We just want to make sure that we didn't, do anything outside of our bounds without.
There's no vegetation disturbance or anything else that's required to do it.
Right.
I could jump in. I think Dave it's a good question, because it just administratively, like, how do we have to tackle this? And I wonder if it would be appropriate maybe at the next meeting or whenever you're ready to submit kind of similar. I don't know if you were watching what we just did for the Ferry Street Intersect project, where they wrote a letter, they kind of showed a little plan, a visual representation of what was going to be done, so the commission could see, like, okay, this is the extent of the difference, and then a decision maybe could be made if it would be necessary to do. I don't know what would be necessary. Is it small enough thing with the small enough amount of disturbance that it could be considered a minor change? Would it potentially be an amended order? So on and so forth. I don't know, commissioners, if you think that that would be an appropriate way to go forward for determining that.
Right. So our quick thought in relation to that is we believe that it's something that we'd like to do as soon as possible. Again, just because it's, as there's stormwater that's being discharged, and we think it could improve the condition. Time is of the essence, just to make sure that before the next big storm, we're able to affect that work. So we could certainly follow that process, and we'd be amenable to that. But I do think it'd be an immediate improvement if we were able to do it, and we have the manpower resources available to do it, just as long as the commission is okay with it. And as Matt said, I mean, it's a 3 or 4 foot extension. It's at the same discharge with the level spreader. It's a pretty minor scope of work.
Cassie, was the commission copied on the field report that we issued from last week? Because there's actually a work description in that field report that describes what was discussed and what the plan of work was. It's not a drawing or sketch, but it's a sequence and description of what operations would happen, if that's helpful.
Joel, is that something that you sent to me? I want to say that I did get that, but
Yeah, I right after you sent the meeting invites, I followed that with a note with that attached.
okay. Let me make sure.
Yeah, it's dated April 19th, and it's item 1D in that field report.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, hold on. I have that. I apologize if I don't know if I can included that in what I sent to the commissioners. Hold on.
Do any of you happen to have that like sketch that we did last time available too, so we could like look at that, refresh our memories?
Let me share my screen right now. I have that report. I did include that in the, this not for 15 stormwater event folder that I sent you guys. Hold on just a second. It's not cooperating. Here we go. Okay, let me try that again.
Yeah, it's right there. So again, it's just a narrative. It's not a drawing, obviously, but it kind of details. It basically details what we just talked about. Just the conditions, what the pipe is, where it is, the fact that it's deteriorated, and what the site contractor had discussed potentially doing, which includes it. And that's that little kind of bullet list there. Removing riprap and filter fabric above the pipe, cutting and removing approximately 10 or 15 feet of the pipe in the level spreader area. Sealing the remaining pipe so any groundwater from deteriorated areas upstream wouldn't be able to migrate down through that area anymore. Backfilling the void with gravel, covering the gravel with filter fabric, and replacing the riprap surface. That'd be about it. So they wouldn't need to do any additional erosion control measures or site stabilization or anything like that, because it's just stone at the surface.
Do you have any photos?
I did not take a picture when I was there, unfortunately. In hindsight, I should have. I usually do when I do these site visits, but we were kind of in conversation the whole time I was there, so I didn't take any snapshots.
I have some pictures. It's from, I want to say, let me just see if I even include the pictures though. I unfortunately didn't. I don't know if I uploaded them. Joel, you sent me a number of pictures, but I don't know if any of them are like good for showing this. They were good for what they needed to be for, but I don't know. Okay, yeah. I have one. Let me try this. So this is kind of, it's not a good, because it doesn't show the whole zoomed out of it, but you can see this is kind of the part that's showing, and it is deteriorated on the bottom.
And you can kind of, that is actually a good image. I mean, it's sideways, but showing that it's, you know, it's not embedded in the embankment, in the stream embankment. It's really sitting on top of rock at the limit of the work, and everything beyond it is, you know, it's just basically the riprap surface of the level spreader, just immediately beyond where it's kind of protruding out of the stone there.
So you'd have to remove the new level spreader and then take this out and then like put some new stones back where the pipe was.
It'd basically just, well, they wouldn't remove the entire level spreader. It would just be, you know, a section, probably, you know, a couple feet wide where the pipe is, and it would get backfilled with gravel. So, and covered with stone. And what the gravel would do is, over time, if there was groundwater movement and the silty material in the existing surface started moving, that would eventually clog the gravel and it would seal itself up over time, versus backfilling with like crushed stone or something like that. So backfilling the pipe void with gravel is important, compacting that, and then backfilling the whole thing with the level spreader, you know, riprap surface.
You think there could be like stormwater just sort of sinking in through the level spreader and then through the wall?
That's what they're suspecting is happening.
Okay.
If you look up inside the pipe, it's hard to see here, but
yep.
You know, the pipe base is gone, and there's a lot of fairly like clean looking gravel material in there from what I could see. And what that tells me is there's soil movement, and fines are moving out of that soil and making their way out of the pipe. So whether that's been happening, you know, from groundwater movement too over time, it's hard to say, but it's definitely possible that it could be happening from stormwater intrusion from the level spreader itself, for sure.
Yep.
And the pipe there's no benefit for the pipe being there, frankly.
Right, because this pipe isn't connected to any of the new stormwater structures, correct?
No, it's cut and capped upstream.
So in the photo that we're looking at now, those stones on the bottom, those would basically stay in place. The pipe, like all that's happening is the pipe just gets yanked out and backfilled, and then maybe a couple of new stones put right at the surface, backfilled with compacted material.
Yep.
Are you okay with it?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's outside of the limit of work, but it's actually not in a resource area or anything. And you're not going to have any equipment in the resources area, I'm assuming. So I kind of feel like this is another, like, no big deal, just take care of it type of thing myself.
I'm okay with it. Anybody else have any concerns?
I guess once it's done, could you just provide some additional documentation for the file as to, you know, like some photos before and after?
Absolutely.
A little description. I guess we have a little description, but. Okay.
So I guess, okay, well, it sounds like maybe we could do a vote then, or you all could do a vote saying you approve this minor modification of the work for the pipe as described in the niche proposal given. Is my guess is what that would think that would make sense.
Yeah,
make that motion.
I'll move to consider the removal of the corrugated metal pipe, minor field change consistent with the permits, that does not, you know, a minor field change consistent with the permits, provided that no additional resource areas are impacted as a result of the work, and that documentation be provided showing the completed work following.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, Commissioner Cody absent with notice, Commissioner Busa absent with notice, Commissioner Buttrick,
Aye.
Commissioner Whittemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan, aye. Commissioner August.
Aye.
And Commissioner Teffer is absent with notice. Motion carries.
Okay, cool. And then I don't know, Matt, if you want to speak to the rear retention.
Yeah, so I've got another one. This is a different situation here. This is and actually I have that sketch that I put together and sent Cassie. If you want me to put that up on my screen here.
Yeah, let me give you, make it so you can co-host. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, so the bioretention basin in the east side of the site, this part of the specification for the way that was designed included an underdrain, and the purpose of the underdrain. If I'm telling the commissioners things you already know, I apologize, but just to be clear, the way for bioretention design, there's usually two ways that they drain over time. If the soil material is permeable, sandy, existing soil, they basically just drain through the bioretention filter media and into the underlying soil and down into the groundwater table. For a site like this, where we've got high groundwater and almost completely impermeable soils, an underdrain is required for these. And the function of the underdrain is not to control stormwater flow. It's to provide an unsaturated bioretention filter media in the basin over time, so after a storm event. So the stormwater flow is controlled through the basin. In this case, it's passive discharge through the outlet structure, which is right here. It's basically just a stone level discharge swale. The underdrain would be placed right down the middle of the basin in daylight to grade, and it's basically it's just like a footing drain or a foundation drain or a pavement sub drain. It's exactly the same. It's a small diameter 4-inch pipe perforated in the basin, and it's important to the function of the basin because in order for healthy vegetative growth to thrive in the basin, the plantings that are in there are intended to be periodically inundated with water during rainfall events, saturated soils, and then drained. They won't thrive if the bioretention media is constantly saturated, because it's not really intended to be a wetland community or a wetland constructed wetland system. It's a little bit different. So so the underdrain was in part of the specification. It was left off the plans that were permitted with the commission. So what we're requesting is a modification of the approved plans to include the underdrain. And the implication of that is it will require an extension beyond the existing limit of work into the buffer zone on this part of the site to excavate a relatively small trench. It's probably gonna be a 2-foot wide trench through this open field area here. Placement of the pipe and a minor amount of grading at the end to bring the pipe opening to daylight so it can drain off into the woods here. So no vegetative change other than removal of the sod surface and replacement of that, and minor grading here. No extension of the woods, no cutting, no grading is really required. It's all going to go back in at existing grades. But it is some additional work in the buffer zone that was not originally included with the package. So that's why we brought that to Cassie's attention, so she could distribute it and then we could discuss it at the meeting tonight. So
It's Mike. So can you state again why that underground drain was needed?
So if you can picture, and I don't have a section of the basin here, but if you can picture, taking a cross section through that basin, What's in there is it's a very shallow depression. It's only about, from the outlet to the basin surface, it's only about 6 inches or so. So it doesn't retain a lot of surface water. And below that, there's about 18 to 24 inches of bioretention soil, which is filtration media. It's fairly permeable. It's not like a wetland soil or a regular topsoil or loam. It's really like a planting and filtration media for the basin. And in order for that to function properly, water collected in the basin during a rainfall event is going to pond at the surface for a certain period of time. But the way it's supposed to work is that water will draw down gradually through the filtration media. And that action of moving down through the media picks up nutrients and other pollutants in the stormwater flow, gets absorbed into the soil media, and then drains out. And if this was being constructed on a site that had permeable soil, like sandy soils, you wouldn't need an under drain because it would just drain through the filtration media and into the natural soil. But that won't happen here just because the soils are basically impermeable, the natural soils on site. So an under drain is required at the base of that filtration media so that it can still drain down properly over time. And it doesn't happen fast. This is not going to be like a point source discharge from the basin. It'll be like a trickle of water for some period following the end of the storm or the rainfall event or any typical rainfall event. Just to keep the soil from saturating.
Is this a dry pond currently? I mean, there's no culvert for excess water to exit.
No. It only during a storm event, it fills up that 6 inches of surface water, basically ponds in here, and then any excess flows over this outlet control structure here. It's just a stone swale basically at the outlet. So the draining down through the filter media is the way that retained water exits the basin, and that's intentional because it filters through the bioretention soil and flows out. So water that comes out of the end of this is filtered water that's gone down through the soil, made its way to this under drain eventually, and drains out. And that's why the pipe's so small, because it's not going to be, you won't see active water flowing through this necessarily during a rainfall event. It'll be like, after it's over for probably a day or two later.
But it's only 6 inches deep, right? So what's the impact to the discharge area over time?
Over here, this discharge over here, it'll have no noticeable impact. It'd be the same as if it was like a pavement subdrain or something like that. Daylighting, there might be, for a day or two after rainfall, there might be a little wet spot in the field here, and that'll just dissipate.
What's the green line?
The green line is the wetland line. The yellow
Yeah.
line is the 100-foot buffer.
Yeah.
And this line right here is the current tree line.
Okay.
And this is all just grass.
I think that could be my concern, was water coming out of the pipe, wetlands. I don't know. Commission, what do you guys think? And ladies?
This doesn't change this is how it was designed, correct? It's
Yeah, and it's unrelated, completely unrelated to the stormwater calculations that were prepared for the project too. It doesn't factor into those at all. It's really design feature of the basin itself and the basin's function. So it's not part of the hydraulic control system for the project. If we had put it this way, if we had permeable soils here, we would probably have accounted for exfiltration of stormwater from this basin as part of the peak flow controls for the site. We'll do that on projects where we've got really good drainage conditions. That's not the case here. It was ignored for those purposes in this project for conservative calculation reasons. So having it in doesn't affect that. The calculations that were done, the stormwater mitigation analysis that was completed, it's unrelated to that.
So Dan, I didn't get that, why it was unrelated for the outfall. Now we have an output.
But there are two things that we're talking about here. The hydraulic function of the basin, all the piping that's connected to it, incoming channels in terms of what the peak stormwater flow conditions are for the site. The rate at which water filters through this material and will move through this pipe is, it's insignificant compared to the hydraulic conditions and the stormwater flow patterns during a rainfall event, which is what the stormwater analysis is all about for these projects. It would happen so slowly, it wouldn't get picked up or be affected. It wouldn't affect those calculations at all. So, which is why it's basically, would typically for something like this would be ignored in those calculations and again, for conservative purposes. And whether, water discharges from here or here, it's discharging to the same wetland system. This is just a woodland wetland that's, off to the east side of the site. There's a fairly broad, wetland system back here. So, the tiny amount of water that's going to be coming out of here versus what's coming out of here during a rainfall event, it's not going to have any impact on the watershed conditions in the wetland area, if that makes sense. Sorry if I'm throwing around too much jargon. I tend to do that sometimes, but it's actually a pretty straightforward thing. And again, just to reiterate the inclusion with the project is unrelated to the stormwater analysis, basically.
Could you remind us too what the source, like where's the stormwater coming from for here and what kind of treatment it gets on its way to the basin?
Right. Well, it gets pre-treatment through natural grass roadside swales along there's if you picture it, you can't see it here because it's a small sketch, but there's a loop road that goes around the back of the school. We elected not to use conventional roadway drainage back there and used naturalized swale conveyance system. So that swale provides some pre-treatment before it gets to the bioretention basin. The bioretention basin itself is the primary treatment mechanism for that water, and the water is being generated by largely by landscaped areas in the back of the school. I think there might be some roof drain connected into the system here. And that's about it. It's a mixed thing. It's stormwater that needs to be treated. It's, there's the loop road is a trafficked area. So, but again, the bioretention basin itself is the treatment BMP. So, nice. And the filtration capacity in that basin is its primary means of treating stormwater. So having the under drain is kind of essential to the way it functions from a treatment standpoint.
But it's Mike, there's no analysis of anticipated biome coming out of the output. You said it's minimal. I don't know what that means.
Well, we're talking about two different things. So,
yeah.
So the basin's main function is for water quality treatment. It does provide a little bit of peak flow control, not a lot. So we're talking about hydraulics, about the way stormwater flows through the site, and we're talking about water quality treatment. So the basin's primary function is for water quality treatment, and it accomplishes that by filtering stormwater through the soil in the basin. And it has to have somewhere to go. So once it filters through that soil, the soil and the plants that have their root systems in that soil are what treats the stormwater. So once it gets to the underdrain, it's in terms of the stormwater standards is treated water. So it's been treated, by the basin. It trickles out at the bottom, and that what comes out at the end of that pipe is treated water.
Agreed. There's a capacity limit though. I have a retention pond in my backyard, so it fills up pretty quick and it drains pretty quick. So
Well, the basin itself is sized based on the contributing area that flows into it, and that was all. That's all in the stormwater analysis that was done, and that's, you know, kind of unrelated to the underdrain itself. That's related purely to the available storage volume in the basin itself. If that makes sense.
So with this, you know, so if the underdrain, if we say no underdrain, then the stormwater basin is not going to work properly.
Correct. I guess that's where what I'm getting at is it should have been included with the original permitting package as part of the basin design, and at that time it would have been part of the approved plans that show that work in that part of the buffer zone. So that's what we're asking to add as an adjustment or amendment to the plans.
And the discharge from the outfall is going to be very low rate, and you know it's basically just bleeding off water.
Correct.
Over a fairly long period of time.
It's going to be a function of how water flows through the filter media in the basin. Yep. And frankly, the fact that there's that's one of the reasons we chose to use a single underdrain in the middle instead of a more expansive underdrain and lateral system in there, is we kind of want it to take longer, because that gives the water more time to filter through the media. It's got a fairly shallow profile, so having it right in the middle, it'll it's kind of hard to actually put a number on. I mean, I suppose we could try and estimate it based on what the anticipated permeability of the bioretention soil is, but my guess is it would probably be a matter of like a day or so, maybe two. Yep. But that's sort of a guess.
And right now, like for the school, for the last 40 years or however long, stormwater just like shoots in a white brook at 100 miles an hour, basically, with nothing slowing it down or stopping it, right?
Right. And just to keep in mind too, this is on the opposite side of the school from Whitebrook. So this is not riverfront, there's no perennial stream over here. It's just a wooded wetland area. And again, it's discharging into it's currently an open, just grass field that was previously mowed. So it's not actively used by the school, and over time, frankly, I'd be surprised if you would even know it's there once it's all grown in.
I guess actually maintenance was going to be my other question or comment is, will this be in the operation and maintenance plan for the facility? And
the only reason I can think that it would be, frankly, is if over time, if the basin was not draining properly, somebody might need to just, verify that, the underdrain opening was not blocked or clogged, or it's not an item that would require maintenance. What primary maintenance in the bioretention basins are the actual basins themselves and the plant material, the bioretention, material surface, etc. So it's a passive thing.
Okay. And I guess my other thought was what the potential was for the end of the pipe to get crushed by like mowing equipment in the long term, or if even if it does that really matter?
No, it's a PVC pipe, and it's not a mower would not crush that. And I don't even know that. I mean, frankly, I'd be surprised if that part of the site winds up being maintained over time. I don't know that, but I don't really think that part of the property was actively used, and it's beyond the active parts of the site. I have a feeling that area is probably just going to grow in over time.
Is there a bigger overview map? I'm not really sure where north, south, east, west is here.
I don't have one handy. North is straight up the page here.
Okay.
So the school building is kind of over here, and beyond to in this direction over here, way beyond that way is the access road that comes into the site. White Brook is over there on the other side of the school. There's just woods over here on this side.
So this is just an exposed pipe that is just coming straight out. And is there anything, like Dan was saying, is there anything around it to protect it? Or is this just going to eventually become damaged? Or
No, the only part of the pipe that'll be exposed is the very end right here.
oh, okay.
This is all underground.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah. It's just not, the reason there isn't anything else shown here is because there is no grading that's going to be required to install it. There'll just be a narrow trench that they'll backfill. Probably have it, backfill in a day, I would think. Seeded, covered up. But yeah, this is the only part that'll be exposed right there.
I had another question. If you don't have the under drain in there now, what is happening in that?
Well, there are two issues there. That's one of the reasons that the basin's currently holding water. We were under the impression that the basin was being used as a temporary sediment trap, basically for the construction site. So once it's installed and the site's stabilized, it'll keep it drained. But right now, that's one of the reasons that the basin's full of water, kind of chronically.
Yeah, and that's my original question is how much drainage would occur, at what point, how much water would be coming out? I mean, I'm just trying to grasp that. Jay or Dan, any thoughts? Not a big deal. I mean, what's going to happen if we get like 100-year flood? What's going to happen?
I can say that regardless of how big the storm event is, there's the amount of water in that basin is limited by its surface volume, right? So that's, under any circumstances, that's all the water that's going to come out of the end of the 4-inch pipe, because the only way it comes out of that pipe is filtering down through the basin material and out, and the only water that can do that is retained water in the basin. Anything in excess of that discharges out through the overflow swale. That's what this is for.
Okay.
This limits how much water is retained in the basin. And that's intentional. It's part of the way it's designed.
Okay.
So if this filled up in a 2-year storm or a 100-year storm, the same amount of water would end up filtering out and discharging through this line here. So
and
again,
the main discharge would be up top.
Correct.
Okay.
Like I was saying, during an actual storm event, you probably wouldn't even see any water coming out of this pipe at all.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be after the fact.
Okay.
By and large.
I guess I don't have a problem with the concept overall. I just don't know if this is too big a change to be just a little, minor clerical error. It's working in a buffer zone. It's things like that. So that's I guess my concern is that I don't know if we can handle it just as a minor change.
I mean, just, thinking about it administratively, I would kind of agree with you, Jay. I don't know if it would be appropriate to do a minor modification for this. At the very least, I think it would be an amended order, just because the plan itself is going to be changing, for the record. And that has implications, like when the project is completed and they come for certificate of compliance, you have to get as-built. It needs to match. Like, the best way to make sure that is the case and make sense for the commission when they see it, however many years when the project is finished. If we do it through an amended order, then this updated plan will be in there and it'll make more sense when we make that comparison at the end. Also, too, like I think, like, in terms of the act, it needs to go. My assumption would be that it needs to go through that process. I mean, it's your guys' decision, but yeah, it's like you have to make, and then you have to make that determination, like, okay, well, is an amended order appropriate then, or is it a new NOI, which obviously has a lot involved with it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just offer, Cassie, that and again, this is just my own personal opinion. I think if we were proposing something that affected the, again, affected the stormwater analysis for the project, if we were adding, impervious cover that changed the flow conditions, or if we were proposing to, do some kind of grading or filling or other major alteration in the buffer area, I think that'd be one thing. In my opinion, this is pretty minor to me. We'd be happy to do obviously whatever the commission wants. But just to reiterate that this is not changing the design of the project in terms of compliance with stormwater standards or any other part of the Wetland Protection Act, other than physical activity in the buffer zone. That's really the only thing that's changing here. So no other part of the project as designed and approved by the commission is changed by this. It's really part of the overall site design that was approved in terms of just a component of one of the BMPs that was included in that proposal originally.
But it's outside the current limit of work though, right?
Correct. Yep, that's true. Absolutely correct.
Yeah, I'm just concerned it's too much of a change to just, pass on it, that's all.
Right. So yeah, so it seems like, most people, I don't know, I guess not everyone has spoken to it, but it seems like leaning towards that a minor modification being approved tonight doesn't necessarily seem appropriate, but amended order might be more appropriate. And that would be interesting because, it would be advantageous to do it that way, I think, because then we would be more likely to have the full commission there for the consideration, but also be able to maybe make it a little more formal, like letter explaining what's going to be done, how it's not going to impact the stormwater calculations, how much of the impact to the buffer zone is planned. So it really would just be the trench, it looks like, and then how much the limit of work would need to change. So with square footages explained.
Yeah, let's do that.
Just devil's advocate. I guess my personal view would be that if this pipe were going to be installed by, within the more wooded, I'm not going to say natural, but the more natural looking area around the resource area, like where it's woods and natural vegetation, I would probably feel differently about it. But since it's going into what's an existing grassed area, we're not going to have like vegetation impacts from the installation other than just grass, which is going to go back like it was. So if I were to apply the test to this of, would it be a negative determination of applicability, or, is this something that would in of itself require an order of conditions? For me, I would probably think that like a negative determination of applicability would be okay. And that's not what we're being asked for, granted, but for me, I would think that it would not be worth going through the whole like amended order of conditions process, that this could be kind of a minor modification. But if I'm the standout, I'm the standout.
I'm just concerned it's outside the limit of work, and that's just something we don't normally allow by just letting it pass.
Sure.
If you want to wait till the next meeting, talk to Melissa about it.
I think it would be good to have a larger group here. I'm concerned about the discharge, the wetlands being there, the impacts. I mean, we're changing the limit of work, so. I
guess it's up to the applicant. You could choose to just file an amended order for it, or or wait, see what the rest of the commission says next week.
It doesn't really matter that much. I mean, And I have actually, Cassie, I haven't filed an amended order on a project in a while. Is that, so that is including, is that a butter notification, public hearing, all that stuff?
So, no, yeah. So what it is for an amended order application, like a formal one, you just write a letter saying that you want an amended order. This is what you're changing, you know, outlining everything that you're going to do. You send it to us. You send it to DEP. Then you also do a butter notification and a legal advertisement, and we do a site visit. You know, it's interesting. It depends on if the commission would consider this usually preceding all of that is an informal consideration of whether or not an amended order would be appropriate, or if the commission seems like they would require an NOI. I don't know. It doesn't sound like you guys have decided whether or not that informal process is happening right now. Maybe you would want to wait to have that informal process happen at the next meeting. You know, if you guys could come to that one on the 10th, and then maybe within that informal process, we could have a discussion to Dan's points that maybe it is a minor modification, though it seems like kind of people are leaning the other way. But
so why don't we do this? Why don't, in the meantime, why don't we can put together this. So this is the memo that I put together for you, Cassie, kind of describing this. Why don't we go ahead and make this a little more formalized, and we'll put together a more comprehensive kind of description of what's being done, the area that's being impacted. And, you know, I sense that there's still a little bit of confusion, and that might be on my part, just not adequately kind of describing this, but confusion regarding its potential impacts in terms of site hydraulics, flow patterns and stuff. So maybe we can put something together that's a little more descriptive and informative and quantitative in that regard too. So we can package all that up, we'll send that in, and then we'll have a discussion about that at the next meeting when the rest of the commissioners are here. Does that sound right?
That sounds good to me.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that, of course. And we'll probably, so the material we'll put together for that is probably, it'll probably be similar to what we would package up if we were actually doing an amended order. So we'll package it up the same way, make it as comprehensive as we can. We'll have that conversation at the next meeting.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so the commission doesn't have to vote on anything for that.
Nope.
Thanks for waiting for such a long meeting.
Yeah, long meeting tonight.
Thank you. We have one more.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak with you. We appreciate it.
Yep.
No problem.
Definitely.
Good night, everybody.
Everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, the last one that I wanted to take out of order. I have 5 pages of notes. 7S, bundled NOI. Poor Greg, it's been here so long.
Can I get a motion to take 7S out of order?
Second.
I'll move to take 7S out of order.
All right.
I'm getting kicked out of my office space here, so I'm going to switch this. Can go downstairs. Keep
no problem.
Keep going.
All right.
Okay, just to give you a little preamble for Greg's presentation. So we issued the bundled NOI, right, for routine maintenance across the city. And there's a number of categories which kind of trigger if they come back to us for further review or not. And there's a number of projects that I was able to discuss with DPW about. There's questions about, like, since this is the first time they're using it, we're trying to figure out, like, okay, do they have the right category chosen for these projects? And Greg, I don't know if you have one that you want to talk about first. I have pictures and things of when we went out there, but.
Yeah, I think the two Diane had put together for tonight were the South Street basins and the culvert, the outfall there.
Gotcha.
So whichever one you want to start with, we can start with.
Okay, let me pull them up real quick. So basically, Yeah, so there's other projects coming down the way, but we're just gonna talk about these two. So the first one is it's where South Street meets the bike path.
I'm signing out from here. I'm signing in over there. Can you let me?
Okay, all right.
Bye.
Cassie, real quick, is this a result of just maintenance or a state or citywide review of culverts?
Okay, so I don't know if these project proposals are a result of the citywide review that they've been doing. I guess Greg, you can talk to that.
These are mostly maintenance.
And that's what the intent of the bundle NOI was for these kind of maintenance projects. Some of them just seem to be potentially a little more involved. Maybe there would be more review by the commission as it's explained in the bundle NOI. So let me share my screen with the oh, I don't have it pulled up. Hold on. Okay.
I think there were a few South Street ones, right?
Yep, so that's right. So the first one is for the South Street drainage. So I think I'll scroll to the map first, which is the easiest way to understand it. So here's South Street, and here's the bike path, Manhattan Rail Trail, and there's drainage pipes kind of originating over here before the path, going under the path, and then it reaches, this is a whole wetland area down here. And if you might be familiar with when we talk about Cernak and things like that, that property is kind of all up and around here. But so what they want to do, there's other pictures. There's kind of a basin ditch. It goes under the Manhattan Rail Trail. Then there's another ditch, a pipe, and another ditch, and then the wetland. And first basin, then so that's over here. Then it crosses the Manhattan Trail bike path, and then there's another ditch, and then you can see where it comes out. This kind of pond here, and then the final wetland. And I guess I'll give it to you, Greg, if you want to talk about like what actually you guys want to do here for these pipes and such.
So looking at the picture you have up there now where it says Basin Ditch 1, we want to get in there and cut the vegetation back. There's a lot of litter we want to clean up and just get the outfall of that pipe, opened up better and put some riprap in there to give, kind of armor the basin that it's dropping into there. And then work from there over, cut the vegetation back, and basically do the same thing in all three ditches, and then put some more riprap in the final. Cassie, can you scroll that down a little bit? In I think it's the last picture right here, the last photo 4 there, you can see where it's really, in some of these larger rain events we've been getting, it's really eating away at the outfall there, and we want to line this whole area with riprap to just to protect it, and really it hasn't been properly maintained, and all we're trying to do is get in there and maintain it better.
Right, and so these structures, they don't have, it's not like a stream running through them or anything. It's just drainage from regular stormwater.
It's picking up John Street, Sunset, that whole neighborhood up off of South Street there.
Yep, and so you're not going to change the pipe, you're not removing the pipes, they just want to clear vegetation and put in riprap essentially.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so then the question becomes, just confirmation that that's appropriate for, let's see. Yeah. So I don't know if y'all remember from the bundle NOI, there's a number of categories that things can fall under. And if they want to do the work there, they have to either potentially come for, more notification, or it's fine, it's covered under the bundle NOI. And then they just have to follow the conditions that are in the special conditions that are actually in the NOI, the order that we issued originally. So maybe I should pull that up so we can compare what it says in the bundle NOI. And, so what they're proposing is that further permitting isn't required. It's appropriate to have this just fall under the regular conditions that we issued for it. So let's see, they're talking about category 4 and 5. Stop that share. Okay, so here's the original categories from the actual order that we issued. Category 5, it should include work under dry conditions only in the buffer zone and certain resource areas. The work that is appropriate for being considered under this category is drainage ditch maintenance, including sediment and vegetation removal, culvert cleaning, rock apron repair and maintenance, vegetation management on recreational lawns and fields, and snow storage. So if it can be proven to fall within these categories, then no notification is required. Best management practices shall be utilized. Avoid or minimize impacts to any wetland resource areas. So they don't need to come for any further permitting with us. And then, you know, what they're requesting here is removal of vegetation. The thing that Diane had created says that they want to do is remove vegetation from the drainage ditches and general cleanup of the ditch basins, installing some of that riprap. So then category 5, buffer zone in certain resource areas. This means work that does not require bypass pumping, which they've stated. Culvert head walls repairs are included in this. Installation and maintenance of any beaver preventative measures, new aprons and splash pads, and permanent sediment trap. So if they're going to do this, they have to have prior notification on site meeting with the Conservation Commission and or its agent, which we did do that. We did a site visit. Before any work in emergency, they get a notice us within 24 hours of completion. In either situation, commission review to determine possible need for additional filing. So because they want to install new riprap, it's not just the repair and maintenance of existing, because they want to install new riprap in the existing ditches. They're coming to see if you guys feel like they need to do further review, or if it's appropriate in this instance to let it fall under the, you know, myriad of conditions that we've outlined here in the original order, which is essentially kind of like the boilerplate conditions that we normally issue.
I think I think I'm okay. But what's the definition of a drainage ditch? Was there a definition? I don't know what that is.
I guess the big difference is that it's not like connected to a stream or anything like that. It's literally a ditch that is a result of the city's drainage structures that deal with all the water that is moving from the streets and parking lots and things like that, you know, whereas like if there was an existing brook or stream, that would be a different story.
Okay. So have they mapped out drainage ditch versus culverts?
I'm sorry, what? I don't understand.
Do we know what's a drainage ditch work versus culvert work versus?
Well, they're not proposing anything inside of the existing culverts. It's literally just everything outside. So vegetation management and adding riprap.
I think I'm okay with it. I think that's what the whole purpose was of that notice of intent was, so they could do these kinds of things without having to, you know, waste a lot of time. So I think I'm okay with it.
Right, and they'll still be beholden to all the special conditions from that order. So they're still going to have to meet all those requirements and do all those things, which is basically like the boilerplate order of conditions that we normally have. So it's basically like we've already approved this work. We just want this as a determination to make sure it doesn't go beyond what was already considered, you know, essentially what's listed in that table.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Thank you.
And I think, you know, obviously if you guys have other questions, have at it. I guess administratively, it makes sense to do a vote to say like, you know, this work at the South Street Mail Trail does not need further review and approval, or I don't know how you guys want to word it. Or if you have other questions, obviously, if you're there.
Does anybody have any other questions? Does someone want to make that motion?
Come on, Dan, we're looking for you. You're the wordsmith.
So we would be moving that the proposed work appears to be covered under the
I second.
Sorry, I got muted. But essentially,
hate doing this on my phone. So yeah, it would be just confirming that the proposed work appeared to be like covered under the, like, what's the word? The generic order of conditions, what's it called?
I guess bundled is the word that has
The
been
bundled
used.
order of conditions. All right. That's my motion.
That's good.
I second
Yep.
that motion.
Second. Roll call vote. Commissioner Cody is absent with notice. Commissioner Buza is absent with notice. Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Whittemore.
Aye. Thank you, Dan.
Ryan, aye. Commissioner August.
Aye.
Yes. Okay. And Commissioner Teffer is absent with notice. Motion carries.
Okay, cool. I guess I'll probably just issue like, I'll send you like a letter, Greg, just like saying that explicitly.
The only thing is just to make sure there's no endangered species involved. I think that's the one thing about the bundled order of conditions, is that if there's an endangered species thing that would usually get covered under the Wetland Protection Act, that they would have to go through a different process. That's not us.
Yeah, that's true. Let me check. We can check that pretty quick. Hold on.
Well, I mean, it's not really it's not the commission's concern so much.
Okay, well, I can double check that for them for you guys and let you know. It doesn't look like it. I just pulled it up in a massive GIS, so Mass Oliver. So I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so then there is a second project proposed. Then this is for also South Street. If I have that correct, Greg, it's
Yep.
Okay. So this is for in kind of an emergency situation. There was an existing drainage pipe that goes right into Wilton Brook. That kind of just slopes right down. I'll show a picture in a second. There was a storm coming, and water had been kind of just gathering on South Street, kind of on that bend, and kind of creating a hazard, I guess is what it's been determined. And they went in, and DPW made a change to that area to try to accommodate and lessen that like gathering of standing water. I think it was determined that probably it should have gotten an emergency certification, which is what it is. But the question now is that work is not complete, and they want to do a change for the curb. Is that correct, Greg? Maybe.
Yeah, we need to get back in. So basically what happened was there was a corrugated metal pipe there that the bottom had rotted out of, and it starts carrying sediment from underneath the pipe. And it was starting to wash the entire slope away and undermine the roadway, which we just paved. So we had a major rain event coming. I had to get a crew over there and get a new pipe in place and rebuild the slope before the major rain event. And at that time, we put an additional pipe in to catch the flow from both directions. And now we put that together with temporary, it was in the winter, so we couldn't get asphalt. So we put it all together with just temporary patch. And now we need to get back in there, kind of line everything up a little bit better, and then do it all with hot mix asphalt so that it's a more permanent repair.
Right. So it's in the same area, really.
That's right down the street. Yeah.
Yeah, just down the street. So here's the bike path again. But here, right along, this is Wilton Brook, and there is a culvert that goes under the road. And so this next picture will make it make more sense that like right on top of that culvert is like this drainage pipe. The culvert is genuinely just right below these. It used to be just one, now there's two. And then this kind of temporary patchwork that was completed. And so now they're wanting to do along the curb here. kind of berm to kind of guide the water to these pipes and have them function better. And so I guess the question is like,
Well, the work's really happening mostly in the road already, right?
mm-hmm.
The edge of the road and then the embankment. But basically the embankment restoration is complete. We just need to take the temporary patch out here and then, you know, kind of line everything up a little bit better and lock it in with asphalt.
Yeah, I have other pictures. Let me share them because it was, when we went out there to look at it, it was like actively raining, which was pretty helpful. You could see how the water was functioning there. So you can see the water is making it to this one, but it's not making it to this one. But this change would help that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And locking it all in with hot mix asphalt is the answer, because what's happening, we had so many rain events, it was just getting into the temporary patch and in between it and continuing to erode rather than get into the pipes like it should be. So once we get it in with real asphalt, it'll be a much better repair, and get that berm installed there to keep the water on the roadway until it gets to the pipes.
So it's kind of an interesting situation because this was, when it was originally installed, it probably should have, because now there's two pipes here. Before it was just one, I think. I don't know which one it was, or if it was just one that was like as big as the two of them. Do you know, Greg?
It was one larger corrugated metal. I think it was like an 18 that was there.
So, okay, so that's what was there before, and then that was changed to these two. The
reason for that is we wanted to get a wider throat here. The two flared ends that we have in there gives it a much larger capture. We were just trying to keep the road from undermining and the bank from, deteriorating any further.
Right. And I think just like thinking about it in terms of like a permitting sense, I had spoken to Melissa about it. She had reached out to me because she saw that it had been completed, and her thought was that, that work should have been permitted before. And so now that they want to go in and, improve it, this change that they've made, is there more permitting that's required, or I don't know what happens now with that in mind.
Could we punt this one to next week, since Melissa is like aware of it, that she may have an opinion on the matter?
I'll second that.
You guys had other projects. Do you think you're probably going to present those next week anyways? Does that make sense?
Yeah, Diane was going to have everything together. So.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, they have more.
There was Emerald Place, and there's one more, but I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Let's do that.
Yeah. All right. I move to continue this to May 10th.
I second.
Roll call votes. Commissioner Cody absent with notice. Commissioner Busa absent with notice. Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Commissioner Whittemore.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan, aye. Commissioner August.
Aye.
And Commissioner Teffer absent with notice. Motion carries.
Well, so Greg, the first one is good to go. It sounds like just review the conditions from the bundle NOI. I'll send you a letter so there's something for the record. And then we'll see you next time on the 10th.
Yeah, maybe me or Diane, one of us will be here.
All right.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Is there anything urgent left?
Can I make a motion to continue the other items to next meeting?
I have one more thing that really kind of is urgent. This is the last thing, but it should be quick. So for the project the NOI that we talked about earlier, they're also the restoration project, the last NOI by Fuss and O'Neill. The city is also pursuing a grant through MVP to help pay for this project. And so they just want a letter of support for them pursuing the grant. So it's not saying that we have approved the work. It's not saying that the, NOI process doesn't matter. They just want to know that they can go for the grant and that the commission likes them going for the grant.
So what's the grant for?
it's to help pay for, it's through MVP, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness,
Right.
for that restoration project NOI that we were previously just talking about tonight.
What do they need? What do they need from the Conservation Commission?
Let's to fill out this letter.
Yeah, so basically a letter saying that like,
Support?
yeah, going for the grant. So not
Okay.
saying that the work is approved or anything like that. That's still going through the hearing process and they have to do it. And we've done this before for other grants that the DPW or not DPW or the city
Yes.
generally has gone through.
That's
Maybe-
correct.
And they have a template and everything, so.
Does anybody have a concern about it?
No?
No.
Can we want to make a motion to approve?
Issue the letter.
Dan, that's you.
I'll move to issue a letter of support for the proposed, what was it, Brickyard Brook bank restoration project or outfall repair project or whatever it was.
Second.
Yeah.
All right, roll call. Commissioner Cody, absent with notice. Busa, absent with notice. Commissioner Buttrick.
Aye.
Commissioner Whittemore.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan, aye. Commissioner August.
Aye.
And Commissioner Teffer, absent with notice. Motion passes.
Cassie, can we have 232 Park Street discussion for next meeting?
It's fine with me if it's okay with you.
It's fine with me. Thank you.
Okay, cool. I don't have anything else super pressing, I think.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right.
Second, third, fourth.
Oh, that was a long one.
Yeah, I think this is a record.
This may have been my longest pandemic video call ever.
Yeah, really?
I think.
Jeez.
All right.
All right. Good night, everybody.
So
Thank
I-
thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone. I appreciate it. All right, good night.